This will be a 54-yard attempt for Kaimi Fairbairn. He's 29 years old in his 8th NFL season. John Weeks, the snapper. Cam Johnston, the holder. Fairbairn's kick is good. And the Texans win it here in Nashville.
The JV Houston Texans came into Nissan Stadium and knocked you out in overtime and knocked out your quarterback and knocked you out of the playoffs for the second straight year. The Tennessee Titans are not going to be making the playoffs after they had a 90-something chance last season to make the playoffs. They ended up losing all their games then, and it feels like outside of a couple Will Levis miracles this year, they've lost all their games, it feels like, this year. And here we are on December 18th. No playoffs. Not that we thought on December 17th they were going to make the playoffs. Not that we thought last week they were going to make the playoffs or the week before that. But now, you know, there is no chance of making the playoffs. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios. So I'm going to start with this. On a Titans Monday, if I owned the team, yesterday would have been the moment. As I have said many times on this program, if you're new to it, you'll catch on. While I talk about the ramifications of firing a coach or thinking about how much room a coach has before they should be fired, or I have a very firm red line. So much so that when I say fire a coach, that is stepping over the red line and there is no stepping back. And if there is a stepping back, then it would come with a humongous admission of failure on my part to adequately read the situation. Yesterday, if I owned the football team, that would be it for Mike Vrabel. And that'd be it for Rand Carthon, too. At the end of the year, I'd clean house. I wouldn't fire Vrabel today because I just don't see, what would that accomplish? And then I'd have to pay somebody more money, and I don't even know who on the coaching staff I'd elevate to interim coach, and it seems like they're playing hard, so I don't need to fire the coach today. But it would be done. At the end of the year, on what they call Black Monday, now it's kind of become Black Sunday, where after the games wrap up, you start to hear the reports come out about this guy fired, that guy fired. We would have a statement after the game on Sunday against Jacksonville at home, and they could win these 3 games. Doesn't matter to me. There would be a statement that's released by the team that would tell the fans and everybody else that we appreciate Mike Vrabel for all that he has done for the Tennessee Titans, and surely there were a lot of great moments, but that we are going in a different direction because it is time to go in a different direction. The Tennessee Titans are bad. Some of that is not completely Mike Vrabel or Rand Carthon's fault, but they shouldn't be this bad. They shouldn't be so bad that they can't beat a junior varsity team with a third-string quarterback at home. They shouldn't be so bad that they get their franchise quarterback, or at least their potential franchise quarterback, sacked 7 times by a team who is missing the 3rd overall pick, who is their leading sacker. They shouldn't be rushing for 0 yards with Derrick Henry as the running back. I don't care if you're playing the 85 Bears. Derrick Henry shouldn't have 0 rushing yards. But again, this was the JV Texans. This wasn't the real Texans. This was a preseason Texans squad that you lost to. It's time to stop making excuses. It's time to smell the coffee and say, they ain't got it. Last year's team was not good, but it wasn't this bad. It wasn't this bad. This is inexcusable, what happened yesterday. What's happened the whole season has been completely inexcusable. So let's start with Vrabel. Vrabel's coaching staff is an absolute train wreck. We begged and pleaded for him to get rid of the special teams coach, and he was defiant because he evaluates it and he watches it. And he played in the NFL, remember that? He played in the NFL. No need to change special teams coaches. No need to. Cost you a game. Cost you a division game at home. Cost you your punter. Cost you the Ravens game. Can argue that it cost you the Saints game. Special teams aren't important. What about the offensive line coach? Because, again, Vrabel took a risk by hiring terrible offensive line last year. Vrabel took a risk by promoting an assistant that was already on the staff who has no NFL experience to being the head offensive line coach of an offensive line that, by their own admission going into the offseason, needed a major renovation. And Andre Dillard is what they decided to work with. They drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick in the draft. I know a lot of you think that guards, like every other position, guards as important as receiver, guards as important as quarterback, guards as important as pass rusher or corner or whatever. It's not. I used to work with a general manager in the NFL who said if you draft a guard in the top 10, and I guess 11's technically not top 10, but close enough, he ought to be going right to the Pro Bowl. This guard can't do anything. He can't run block. And yesterday, he sure as hell couldn't pass block. They gave Aaron Brewer $4.3 million to play center. He can't snap. I mean, what are we doing here, folks? The coaching staff is a debacle. So Vrabel can't evaluate the coaching staff and did a terrible job of replacing coaches he fired last year. Pretty big job of a head coach. And whatever input he had on the roster, he has no idea about player evaluation. Because, again, the best they're doing for me is Azeez Al-Shaair and Arden Key, who they can't leave out there on rundowns. And, I mean, it shouldn't be this bad. It's not like they had $0 to work with. They did. They just used them on players that aren't very good. Or their coaching staff, which I think we have to be open to the possibility of, is not putting them in position to be successful. Then there's Carthon. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you can't blame the GM. He's only in the first year, and Robinson missed on this pick, and Robinson missed on that pick, and Vrabel was involved here. And I do have sympathy for the first-year GM because I don't even know how much power he has. I don't think any of us know how much power he has. Some of us assume, some of us don't. I'll just tell you right now, I have no idea. And it's not Rand Carthon's fault that JoJo Domann got a ridiculous penalty and just completely unnecessarily ridiculous holding penalty late in the game that probably cost you the game yesterday. But it is Rand Carthon's fault that JoJo Domann is on this team. My thing with Rand Carthon is this. He's a BSer. He's not a doer. Everything is some sort of excuse or some sort of, kind of smooth, rehearsed talk. That's why his lines in the TD article were almost identical to the same things that he said at his introductory press conference. So you're telling me in a year nothing has changed about his feelings towards the job or Vrabel or the team or anything. And again, that's because I feel like he's a BSer. He's not a doer. Other than Spears, who, again, I'm not convinced is an every down back in the NFL, but he's never had the opportunity to prove it, so I'm not going to say he's not. And it's hard to determine that with this ragtag group of nobodies on the offensive line. Who did they add that has really improved the ball club? They lucked out on DeAndre Hopkins. They lucked out on Will Levis, again, because they took a guard in the first round. So that's it. Now, I can tell you the players that they lost this offseason that you knew they were going to have to replace one way or another, whether it was Ben Jones or David Long Jr. or Kevin Byard or Austin Hooper, who actually contributed to the team last year that, again, wasn't good enough to make the playoffs, and they didn't. Or their replacements stink. So either Rand Carthon, in terms of evaluating the players, the guys that were leaving and the guys they needed to go get, either he's totally incompetent, or, and again, I'll just tell you right now, either he's totally incompetent or he's allowed incompetence for an entire offseason that gave you the offensive line that you witnessed yesterday. That's how you end up with that offensive line. Incompetence. Incompetence from the coach, incompetence from the line coach, incompetence from the general manager. That's how you end up with that line. So instead of this trying to play the blame game of, well, that's Vrabel's fault. That's not Rand's fault. That's Rand's fault. That's not Vrabel's fault that they went out and signed Daniel Brunskill from the 49ers. That's not Rand's fault. That's not the offensive line coach's fault. The offensive line coach, instead of all of that, we're just going to clean house. We're going to start over. We don't have to play the blame game that way. I've got 14 positions to replace this upcoming offseason. 14 starting positions to play in the NFL. Unless you want to roll Jalen Duncan back out there at left tackle, which with this bozo crew, I wouldn't put it past them. So I've got 14 spots to fill. I pretty much have a full draft class except for my third round pick, which if my new general manager or my new coach didn't like Will Levis, which is possible, you can probably deal him to get that back and some. And you've got all kinds of money coming off the books. It's time for a fresh start. Because no matter how bad things are, they never should have been this bad. Going into the offseason, Vrabel said their plan was to compete. Rand said their plan was to compete. Amy said their plan was to compete. And they didn't. They couldn't beat a JV Texans team at home. They couldn't beat a terrible New Orleans Saints team in week 1. They couldn't beat a Cleveland Brown team that had Deshaun Watson as the worst passer in the NFL before they went into that game. They tried to single up Andre Dillard with Myles Garrett. It's been this way the whole year. Sure, they had the miraculous comeback last week at Miami. It was fun to watch. But let's not kid ourselves. This is who you are. You are a 5-9 football team. You are bad enough to lose to the JV Texans. Remember the end of the year last year when you lost to a similar JV Texan team at home and Malik Willis played quarterback and Vrabel realized, okay, we got to take him out. We got to put Josh Dobbs in. That was the team that you played yesterday. And you couldn't beat them. Which means that with an entire offseason, with draft choices, with free agency signings, with everything else, you either couldn't get the players to beat a JV Texans team, you couldn't coach up the players to beat a JV Texans team, or you're really, 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 really unlucky. Which one do you want to pick? The Texans played without their starting quarterback, left guard, center, right tackle, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and they were missing the number 3 pick in the draft. And you still lost. They threw you a pick 6. You did nothing to earn, by the way. The quarterback just threw the ball to Molden, and he ran into the end zone. They gave you 7 points. And you still lost to a third-string quarterback. And there have been too many games like this season. There have been too many games like the Tampa Bay game where Will Levis had to be peeled off the ground. The Jacksonville game, busted coverages in the end zone for touchdowns. There have been too many games. The first Indy game where you couldn't stop the run. The Pittsburgh game where at the end, when it really mattered, you couldn't get a stop. It's been that way all season long. Some games, more of the blame goes to the offense. Some games, more of the blame goes to the defense. Some of these games have been pinned on special teams. But the reality is, it's all bad. And it should have never been this bad this year. You're playing the worst division in the NFL in the NFC South. You're playing a division in which you've lost 4 games. You're 0-4 in the division, and you've lost to 3 backup quarterbacks. It should have never been this bad. They knew. Vrabel said it. They said it. They went on record at the end of the season, at the combine, after the combine, at the owners' meetings. They said offensive line, offensive line, offensive line, protect the quarterback, and they've got both quarterbacks hurt. It's time for a change There is no accountability here, and I don't see any path for them to get better because I don't think they have the answers. So before I had said, after the Jacksonville game, I said, look, if I own this team, I'd be sitting up there in the box and I'd be thinking, you know what? At the end of the year, there's a chance we're probably going to have to clean house. Yesterday was the day that if I owned this football team, I decided I would. At the end of the year, they're all gone. That way, there's no question of, was this his fault? Was it his fault? Was it John Robinson's fault? He's gone. Was it Rand Carthon's fault? He's gone. Was it Mike Vrabel's fault? He's gone. Was it Tim Kelly's fault? He's gone. Was it Jason Houdeling's fault? He's gone. They're gone. And I don't think the Titans will do that, but they should. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And that doesn't mean that Vrabel's a horrible coach or can't win elsewhere. Or it doesn't mean any of that. It just means that for this team right here, no more blaming any. They're all gone. No more excuse making. Every coach has them. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones as we always do on a Titans Monday. Stillman & Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Well, let's see how Tennessee handles this here, as they're going to set up for 3rd and 8. Arch, you don't get any yards here, then potentially 4th and 7, 4th and 8. What do you do with the football right around midfield? Tennessee right on the fringe of their playoff chances dwindling.
Because in theory, you don't really have anything to lose, but if you end up punting, then you're essentially conceding the tie.
Levis is thrown for just under 200 yards. Here they come again, and they get to Levis again. Desmond King. Boy, Levis is in pain. He's hurt. You see him clutching down at his left leg. Oh, boy. He has been beaten and battered in this game. 7 sacks produced by this Houston defense.
Well, that's...
Just hate to see this. With this town, a buzz over this kid starting to come into his own at quarterback. And it's that lower left leg that they are looking at with the athletic trainers.
Yeah, this is a shame.
There you go. They got the second quarterback hurt. Got the first quarterback hurt. Now they've got the second quarterback hurt. Amazing. I was totally unaware of this. I thought the Titans were going to go 10-7 this year. And what's crazy is if they could just make 2 extra points, there's an argument to be made that if they could make 2 extra points, then they could be 7-7, right? And I kept thinking about, man, I was right about Aaron Brewer. I was right about the offensive line coach. I went to practice the 3rd day, saw the offensive line, walked out, called my dad, said that they're horrible. I mean, I was right about almost everything, but then why did I think 10-7 before the year? And the one thing I kept saying over and over and over and over again, and I was dead ass wrong about. I said there is no way this offensive line could be as bad as it was last year. Last year they allowed 49 sacks. This year they've allowed 50. And the Texans yesterday didn't even have Will Anderson Jr. They set out in the offseason to fix the offensive line, and they got worse. To me, that is felonious enough that I don't need to give you a second chance. I don't need to give the commission of Rand and Vrabel a second chance to try to go out and go find more players for me and put them in there and hope that I'm going to get a different result. Because you're not. If they were competent at all, they would have at least hit on 1 offensive lineman this offseason. Instead, they hit on 0. Is it the line coach's fault? Is it the coach's fault? Is it the GM's fault? Is it the commission's fault? Is it all the collaboration's fault? I don't care. Fire all of them. Now you don't have to worry about it. Start over, get a real general manager, go get a new coach that's probably more of a strategist than Vrabel, and Vrabel will land somewhere else, and he might win some games. But he's not going to win any games here. I mean, I'm just telling you what it is. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com on a Titans Monday. Time to get to your phone. Scott has been waiting patiently, and he's going to kick us off today. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Scott.
Great show, buddy. I look forward to hearing your show every afternoon. Malarkey went to the playoffs and he got canned. I just don't know what she's thinking. That maybe they should have got rid of Vrabel and kept the general manager because they're obviously worse. And I don't know what's happened to Henry. A good back breaks tackles. He can't even get back to the line of scrimmage, and I'm really tired of watching him carry the ball. It's embarrassing.
Yep, thank you for your call, Scott. So I think it's pretty telling. And, again, I don't think Derrick Henry's the same back that he's always been. I think Derrick Henry's, a fine back. I still think there's a lot of value to Derrick Henry. And I think this offensive line is so bad that there's nothing Derrick Henry can do. That's just me. I'm sure some of you think Derrick Henry is the problem or is a part of the problem. I just think it's incredibly telling that Derrick Henry's best run of the day yesterday was one where he ran it to the right. There was no room to run. He reversed field and ran it back to the left. He's got no blocking. They show the replays, and there's 4 guys in the backfield. I mean, at his prime, Derrick can't break some of those tackles. Barry Sanders can't, spin away from those tackles. There's nothing he can do. Now, again, do I think that he's, the best running back in the NFL now? Probably not. But I don't think that it's like, oh, Derrick Henry's the problem. I would agree. As far as the Malarkey thing is concerned, I think it's incredible that when it comes to firing a coach who won a playoff game for this franchise for the first time in like 15 years, they can fire that coach. And, no, that makes a lot of sense. But they can't get offensive line figured out with an entire offseason. They get the first quarterback killed. They get the second quarterback killed. And I have to give everybody a second chance? I don't understand that. Somebody's got to explain that one to me. John Robinson, and I know, again, I don't want to make this about Malarkey and John Robinson because at this point in time, if I, again, own the team and I'm firing Vrabel and Rand, I'm not hiring those guys. John Robinson won 61% of his games. John Robinson came in his first year, and this offensive line might have been just as bad as the offensive line he inherited when they were picking number 1 overall, and immediately brought in Ben Jones, and immediately drafted Jack Conklin. This group brought in Andre Dillard and Peter Skoronski. And Skoronski blows. Like, I'm sorry. For a guard who's picked 11th, he can't run block. He can't pass block. He sucks. Now, does that mean he will always suck? I don't know. But when you're the 11th pick in the draft, you're supposed to be good. John is up next here on the Titans. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Johnny?
What's up, man? Boys, thanks for taking the call of the show. I'm going to get right into it, man. At this point, it's not even about watching the players of the game because we know what that product is. It is the way the organization is run, and I call in every week and say the same thing. And I go back to when Arthur Warren told Kevin Byard when he first got to Philly, you are a winner now, and things are done differently here. And you can see that in the product. And that's all I got, man. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. You know what's crazy? I saw a report yesterday that Sean Desai, the defensive coordinator of the Eagles, has essentially been demoted, and that Matt Patricia has been promoted. Now, it's not the official title or whatever, but I saw that, and I'm like, wait a minute. The Eagles went to the Super Bowl last year, and they promoted Sean Desai, and Sean Desai has been defensive coordinator for like 9 games, and they've already seen enough that they're like, no, we got to do something here. We got to do something here. But here in Tennessee, it's like we can see bad, but we're not allowed to do anything about it. I don't understand. Oh, yeah, that's because they win. That's because they're committed to winning in Philadelphia. Here, I don't even understand what the positive point in keeping Vrabel and Rand into next year would be. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. It is your day on a Titans Monday. And again, I was watching the game with my dad yesterday, and I turned to him and I was like, if I own this football team, and I know it's easy to say if I was the coach, if I owned the team, if I was the quarterback, but if I owned this football team, and we'd be up in the box right now watching the game, and I'd be telling him, because there's really not a lot of people when you're going to make this kind of decision that you can really tell without it ending up in the hands of Adam Schefter. And I told my dad, I said, I'd tell you right now, I mean, we're not going to do it tomorrow. We're going to fire this coach. Or we're going to fire the GM too. 615-737-1025. Join me, Chris, and Derek at Teddy's Tavern this Sunday, 9:30 to 11:30 for the award-winning pregame show. That's right. I'm sure our pregame show will be very, very electric. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment and Beast Unleashed.
On 3rd and 7, Levis is lit up. Khalil Davis making first contact. Huge play for Houston's defense.
There's nothing fancy about this. This is just straight power inside from Davis. He's just gonna play the role of a bully and run over. I believe that's Skoronski. He's just gonna run right over him and get to Will Levis. Levis has zero chance.
37 seconds left. Tennessee working with all 3 timeouts. Levis is buried. Malik Collins.
Spiro, watch the violence that Malik Collins plays with. Look at how he just violently clubs Skoronski, number 77. Just swats him out of the way and then pulls Levis to the ground.
There you go. There's your 11th overall draft choice, Peter Skoronski. And again, I didn't make this up. Ian backed me up on this. The old man said if you draft a guard in the top 10, he ought to go right to the Pro Bowl immediately and right onto the Hall of Fame.
Pretty close, yep.
I mean, the guard is not important in the NFL. You can get a guard in the 4th round, the 5th round. You can do that in those rounds. There's your 11th overall pick. And a lot of people have been, tweeting and texting about, well, it's not fair to Rand. It's not fair. You guys are totally on board with firing Vrabel, but it's not fair to Rand. To which I would say this. What has he done that's good? What has he done that's good? It looks like Skoronski's going to be a bust. And again, they may not develop him well or set him up to play well, whatever it may be. But Rand signed Andre Dillard to play next to him and gave Aaron Brewer $4.3 million. Unless Rand is not in charge at all, and then you're telling me that I need to promote him. And I'm not doing that. And instead of trying to decide who's responsible for that horrendous 11th overall pick right now, or decide who's responsible for Andre Dillard, or decide who's responsible for Aaron Brewer, just get rid of them. Just get rid of everybody. Start fresh. Get somebody good. I promised your phones. Josiah is up next here and has been waiting very patiently. Thank you for calling on a Titans Monday. Go ahead, Josiah.
As a Titans fan, we had so much potential a couple years ago, and it's depressing to watch it fall apart. And I think before Henry's completely gone and all of the potential is wasted, we need a coach who's not going to put up with low-quality coaches under him. He's a master strategist. He isn't going to tell us the special teams is doing good when it isn't, and he might just resurrect this team and bring it back to where it should be. And I think that coach is currently working in Massachusetts, and he's going to be looking for a job at the end of the year. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm not interested in Belichick. I think that the dog has learned as many tricks. Thank you, Josiah. I think the dog has learned as many tricks as he can learn there. I mean, Belichick's drafting guards in the 1st round, too, that can't play. So I'm not worried about that. So, no, Belichick would not be the guy. I'll tell you what right now. The guy that was coaching the other team yesterday on offense, Bobby Slowick, the guy that didn't have his starting left tackle, his starting left guard, his starting center, his starting right tackle, his top 2 receivers, his starting quarterback, and realized right before the end of the half, you know what? We run the ball right up the middle every play. We just hand the ball to Devin Singletary every play. That's what we'll do. And actually, that would be the guy I'd be considering. Shanahan guy, clearly completely outworked your coaching staff yesterday. That would be a guy I'd be looking at. And again, you got to interview these guys and make sure that they're not total, booger eaters in real life. But at the same time, that's the kind of coach I think this team needs. Now, that being said, Arthur apparently is in a bunch of crap in Atlanta. And I am shocked that Arthur has had such a hard time coaching for the Falcons. And again, I don't follow this, as far as, the day-to-day or whatever it may be with Atlanta Falcons and why this guy's not that. But apparently, I follow some Atlanta radio dudes, mainly because I'm a Braves fan, and they're tweeting out about how Arthur's biggest problem is that Arthur cannot get up there and admit he was wrong. Arthur is too arrogant. I'm like, gee, I wonder where he learned that from. Because the Arthur that was here, I didn't think he was any of those things. So I guess on one hand, I'm telling you, hey, it's hard to judge these guys from afar. And sometimes it doesn't work out even when it looks like it's going to work out. But also, what you've got now, it's just not. And I'm not interested in Belichick. Sorry. I know a lot of, why? Why would you want Belichick? A guy hadn't won a game in 4 years. Let's go to Billy, who's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. Billy, thank you for waiting. What's up, Billy?
Hey, thanks for your time, Jared. I really enjoy the show.
Sure.
We have to have the worst offensive line in the history of the NFL. It's just,
honestly,
it's
normally I think statements like that are a little ridiculous. You might be right. Like, I didn't. Did you think it could be worse than it was last year?
No, I have a 17-year-old son, and I told him at the beginning of the year there's no way possible it's worse than last year. There was one play from yesterday that sums up the entire season. Stromsky and Duncan are double teaming the defensive tackle, and
they let the guy go right by him
and blow up Derrick Henry. That's that's our season. If you clean house, if you're the owner, you're cleaning house. What's more important, hiring the coach first or hiring the GM first? Thanks for your time, buddy.
Thank you, Billy. GM. And that's why I hate this commission. That's why I think this is so stupid. Vrabel has no business evaluating talent. He's never done it in the NFL ever. Like, just because he played doesn't mean that he knows what makes a good right guard versus what makes, like, a good safety or that wasn't what his job was. In fact, Belichick yelled at a player. I forget who it was. It was some receiver that got cornered at a charity event, and they asked about Wes Welker or something, and he talked about how great Wes Welker was, and Belichick immediately brought it up in the meeting and was like, you don't know anything. You've never evaluated players before. You've never this, you've never that. And so, like, they don't teach the players how to evaluate players. So, hey, man, I know you're an outside backer, and we're really focused this week on how you can get around the edge in order to sack the quarterback against the Jets, but 8 years from now, when you're trying to be a head coach, like, this is what I want to teach. They don't do that. So Vrabel has no business picking players. He has no idea what he's looking for. And I think that players are more important than coaches. And so I think GM is the most important thing. And the difference is between the GM you have now and the GM that I want is the GM that I want will run the franchise. So when you get mad about the 11th overall pick at guard that can't block, you'll know who to blame. And he'll know on the front end, like, hey, man, this all lies at your feet. That's what we call accountability. That's what the Titans don't have. In fact, that's the whole point of the commission, is it allows everybody to pass the buck. Because there is nobody outside of the owner who never talks to the media. There is the buck stops here, put it on me person. And while Vrabel says it, Vrabel also does, the Eric Dickerson loser talk stuff where it's like, well, we played hard, or if this hadn't happened, or if we'd had another quarter, or, and again, that's celebrating almost winning, not winning. And yesterday you played the JV Texans. Let's go to Michael, who's up next on Mike Vrabel. Thank you for waiting, and thank you for waiting patiently. What's up, Michael?
Hey, Jared. Thanks for taking my call. I've been in an argument with one of my buddies who's not really a Titans fan, but he keeps up with them for the past couple months about it. It's like, he thinks that J-Rob is the whole reason that we suck, and I'm saying, like, hey, Vrabel is not completely innocent in all this. So I asked him, I'm going to ask you the same question. How many coaches just in the history of the NFL or currently would be able to go 5-16 over 21 games, which is what Vrabel has done over the past year and a half, and still be able to keep their jobs? And he said the only two that he could think of were Jim Caldwell with the Lions. I mean, a great organization to be
Didn't Jim Caldwell get fired from the Lions for, like, being 9-7?
Yeah, he had 4 seasons, and he only went below 500 like once, and he made the playoffs twice. And for that team, I mean, that's almost like the Super Bowl.
I thought the problem with Jim Caldwell, and I don't remember it exactly, but wasn't the problem kind of like Malarkey, like he won games, but they felt like we could win more games?
More or less, yeah. And the other person that he came up with was Hugh Jackson. And I don't even need to explain why that's not a good company to be in with Vrabel.
Yeah, the only reason for that is, again, that we can't fire – Michael, thank you. The only reason why, Hugh Jackson was a disaster. And, again, that's it. We can't fire somebody after 1 year, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, you can spot bad from a mile away. Like my basketball team right now at Louisville. They got Kenny Payne. He's the worst basketball coach probably in the history of college basketball. The worst. We won 4 games last year. Now, they couldn't fire him for other reasons, political reasons. And they had to give him a second year. And so now they have to sit in it. And it's almost like they had to give him a second year to prove that he was really, really, really that bad. Because nobody could have just taken the hint from a political standpoint with having watched the first year. Well, there are no politics here for me. This is just the Titans. It's bad. Like, it should not be this bad. It's incompetent. It should not be this incompetent. And it is. I mean, plain and simple, it is. And they don't have the answers. They don't know. They don't have the answers. Their answer was a guard with the 11th overall pick. And it's a guard who's not even that good. In fact, I shouldn't even say that good. It's a guard who right now isn't even good. A guard. It's ridiculous. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. It's a Titans Monday, 1025-1063 the game. Tomorrow's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexroad tomorrow morning at 8:45. Pick to Click is brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home with TJ to get your home seen, heard, and sold.
I guess as far as run defense goes, how many missed tackles did you count? And do you?
Well, there was a handful, but there was also some. I don't want to, get this, but 3rd and 15, and they handed off for 14 yards. There was a couple of those 3rd down and long situations where some of those yards were had. There were some snaps on 1st and 2nd down and normal down and distances that weren't good enough. But then there was also, a lot that were. So I think some of the numbers, and again, I don't have a percentage, but there's somewhere on 3rd and long where they handed off and we're in a substituted defense. And, either way, it's got to be better. There were some missed tackles, and, we have to be better all the way around in all 3 phases.
I listened to that today in the press conference, and I was like, oh, my God. The no-nonsense Mike Vrabel. Things are so bad around here that he has gotten to pure, unadulterated bullcrap. Ian, you watched the game yesterday. Was the run defense bad?
It was not good, no.
Okay, so Vrabel's argument was that Singletary had some big runs in passing downs that, again, if it's 3rd and 19 and they run a draw and the guy gets 12, it shouldn't be the end of the world. So I went through every single run with Devin Singletary yesterday, and I took out 3 particular runs. A 8-yard gain on 1st and 17, a 14-yard gain on 3rd and 15, and a 6-yard gain on 2nd and 14. Seems fair enough, right?
Sure.
Okay, so Devin Singletary, who I think averaged somewhere around 4.7 yards a crack, which is just ridiculous for a team that's 26th in the NFL in rushing and 29th in yards per carry coming into the game. Devin Singletary was 23 for 93. Again, taking out those 3 runs that Vrabel argues doesn't count. 23 for 93. That's 4 yards a crack. I mean, they were still bad, right? There was still 11 yards on 1st down from their 1-yard line after Zentner put the ball at the 1 and Moore downed it. That's inexcusable. And again, Vrabel's trying to play that, it wasn't that bad. You take out a couple of these runs and first of all, you can't take out those runs. They did happen. Secondly, if we get to play that game, then we don't count the, 34-yard walk-off touchdown that Singletary had. And so, again, run defense has been terrible all year. I think Mike McDaniel lost the game on Monday night because he got away from it. He could have run Mostert and A-Chain every play and they would have won. But this is a team that's usually good when it comes to run defense year over year over year until this year, right? Again, I used to not worry about Jonathan Taylor or Saquon Barkley running the ball. And now, Devin Singletary has turned into Michael Jordan. And I'm trying to figure out, and Vrabel's like, it wasn't that bad. Yes, it was. It was awful. And the big point here is that Vrabel's supposed to be like a no-nonsense guy, and now he's trying to shovel up nonsense because there's nothing else in the kitty for him to go to. And I couldn't believe that when I heard that. Again, and Vrabel even knew it too. Listen, hey, play that cut again. Listen to the beginning of this and just how much it embarrasses Vrabel to have to, again, what did Eric Dickerson used to call it, almost winning, to go to the, if you take this away or if that didn't happen or if we'd had another quarter, go ahead, just listen to the beginning where Vrabel, you can hear his own embarrassment.
I guess as far as run defense goes, how many missed tackles did you count? And do you?
Well, there was a handful, but there was also some, I don't want to, get this, but 3rd and 15 and they handed off for 14 yards.
I don't want to go there, but hey, on 3rd and 15 they gained 14, so take that one out. No, that's not how this works. Let's go to Tristan, who's up next here on a Titans Monday. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Tristan?
Yes, I'm thinking Vrabel and that defense coordinator need to go and hire Joe Brady or Ken Dorsey. Ken
Dorsey just got fired, Tristan, so I don't think that's an option. Thank you for your call. Here's the thing I would say about everybody out there about, coaches and everything else. So every time there's a decision about firing a coach, and it doesn't matter if it's as egregious as Vanderbilt and Jerry Stackhouse, there's always kind of this, who are you going to get to replace him? As if there's nobody out there on the planet that we don't know of that could be a better coach. And I always get mad whenever people say this stuff because it's like I have to give you a name that all of a sudden is going to make you say, oh, yeah, that would be a home run hire. Except for the fact that, like, nobody knew who the hell Nick Sirianni was, and they seem to be winning a lot of games in Philadelphia. Okay? Like, so, whatever. But, I mean, I'm not going to fire somebody's fired offensive coordinator like a Ken Dorsey or something like that. We can worry about who to hire later. I mean, I'm telling you right now, where I sit with the Titans, and, like, I try not to have these, like, preconceived notions because I think there's a lot of owners that do this where they'll watch on television, they'll see a team that plays well, and they'll say, I want that coordinator to be my coach. And then they interview all these other people, but really they just want to hire that one guy. And I don't believe in that. Because, again, I think it's important to interview people, to get to know them, to get to understand their plans, to talk around the league, to do all these kind of things. Do your homework, that kind of stuff. But Thomas Dimitrov in Atlanta is a guy who I have an immense amount of respect for, who I thought did a really good job in Atlanta, except at the end when he was chasing it, which we would have to discuss in the interview process. And so, but I'd interview as many GMs as I, felt like I needed to interview in order to figure out who the right guy was. And as part of the process, when it comes to interviewing a GM, would be his plan for the coach. Who do you think the coach should be? What do you think we should do to support the coach? Again, that's what these interviews are. I don't know if I should say this or not. Yeah, I shouldn't say it. I'm not going to say it. I'll just say this. I know that at least one general manager interviewed for a job had a giant booklet of like an entire outline for an organization. And that includes coaches and assistant coaches and player development and scouts and trainers and everything else. Because that's how big the job of GM is. At least traditionally. Here, the GM doesn't even have to talk to the media, which is wild to me. Let's go to Dave, who's up next on Will Levis. Thank you for calling. What's up, Dave?
Hey, Jared. Listen, only one thing to me crystallized that I did not already know. The fact that we should not put Will Levis back on the field this year, and I hope to God he didn't ruin his knee or his ankle or whatever happened yesterday, but we already know the boy can play. He's our future. Keep him away from that crap offensive line. That's it.
I mean, the question has to be, are they going to be able to fix it for next year? Thank you, Dave. Are they going to be able to fix it for next year? I figured Levis was out for the year. When I saw Levis, going into the tunnel when they said that he was jogging around, I'm like, okay, it's a sprained ankle. That's probably what it is. Now, his availability for the season will probably be determined by high ankle, low ankle, those kind of things. I'm not going to just say don't play him because I do think the reps are important. They only play 17 of these a year. So there's only so many days for him to practice real football. But, I mean, I assumed Levis was probably out for the year. And I kept telling you guys, like, I told you after week 2. And there were people that texted into the text line after the Titans beat the Chargers. And they were like, Jared, we won. Why are you complaining so much about the offensive line? I'm like, because this is going to be a problem. And Tannehill can't do 15 more of these. And he couldn't. And then they put Levis out there. And Levis kept getting hit. And I'm like, he can't keep doing this. And he got sacked 7 times yesterday in the second half. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So I don't know what's been promised to Mike Vrabel. But yesterday's post-game press conference was something I'm not even used to from him. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Titans Monday. And this is the first Titans Monday that we have had on this program since the Jacksonville game in 2016, where there aren't playoffs to discuss before the playoffs, if that makes any sense, right? Like the Titans Monday last year that didn't have playoffs, last week of the year we were already on to the playoffs. Same again with all the other years, 2018, where they didn't make the playoffs. They lost in the last game. We've got 3 weeks of ball with nothing to play for. It's the first time we've done this since 2016. That's how long ago this was. So the thing about leadership is that it's really easy to be a good leader when things go well. It's easy to be the CEO of a company when its stock hits an all-time high. If I ran a company, would probably love to go on CNBC that day and talk about how great our products are and our employees are fabulous and good. But real leadership is defined by how things are when it's bad. And for Mike Vrabel, I thought he was the luckiest guy over the last 2 weeks. I thought he hit an inside straight because I thought that the Miami game with the Houston game back-to-back could just be dreadful for Mike Vrabel, given the fact that Miami scores about a gajillion points a game, and then Houston's coming to town with the hottest young rookie quarterback in the NFL, who probably should be your quarterback if you could keep your mouth shut. But Tyreek Hill got hurt, C.J. Stroud got hurt, and you were playing the JV Texans, and they still lost. The city of Houston celebrating with glee that not only their team is still in the playoff hunt, but that their team beat their former team in their uniforms. At least that's the way they see it. And as I said on Friday, this is a very personal game for the ownership of the Titans. It was personal for their dad, and it's certainly personal for them. And so I listened to the Vrabel press conference yesterday, knowing that they had lost to a JV team, knowing that the playoffs were gone, knowing that they were awful. So many things went wrong. Well, that's what happens for you to lose to a JV team. It's not like one mistake with an NFL team means that, you should lose to a non-NFL team. No, it's got to be about 50 things. And I wondered how Vrabel was going to handle it. So I watched the Vrabel press conference, and I don't know if it was just like the intensity of the game but I looked at his face, and I looked at his hair, and he looked like a president of the United States that had been through 8 years of war up there at the podium yesterday. And here was Vrabel, just kind of a mix of some of the things he said. And to me, this was something that now that I've been in this industry for a decade, I'm kind of used to, which I call the put a fork in him press conference. That's what I think I heard yesterday.
Yeah, I feel like we, were able to get, some really great stops throughout the day. Don't want to give up those type of rushing yards, but, I give those guys a lot of credit defensively for us that, we did a good job on third down. Got a huge stop there at the end of half, so we'll have to fix and assess the run game, but also, recognize that we did some really good things defensively as well.
Coach, with you guys being eliminated from the playoffs officially at this point, how do you go about the rest of the season, the message to the team?
I don't think we're ready to discuss that, Kayla. I think we're just trying to get back, get healthy. A lot of guys play.
No message for the team.
Far less than 100%, which we know that's going to happen this type of where we're at in the season. A lot of fight, a lot of competitiveness. Rely on our leaders and make sure that we do everything we can to give them an opportunity to feel confident coming into the game. Play with great effort.
Understanding that guys getting hurt is part of it. Is there any sense of organizational guilt for what was assembled to be in front of your two quarterbacks, that they've both gotten hurt?
Nobody likes to see any player get hurt, and the responsibility to protect the guy with the ball, whether that's the quarterback, the running back, the receiver, kickers. So have to do a better job of protecting all of them.
How about the level beyond that in terms of rosters?
We have to do everything that we can to continue to protect the guy with the football.
I heard that, and I'm like, stick a fork in him, he's done. The first was cheering about, well, we got a bunch of stops on defense. Yeah, against a semi-pro team. Against Case Keenum, who threw you a pick six. Against a team that didn't have their starting two receivers, their starting left guard, their starting center, their starting right tackle, and their starting quarterback. Congratulations, you got some stops. Really proud of you there. That's not Vrabel. Vrabel's not the guy, the Vrabel that we know, the Vrabel that we've seen that's been successful before. Vrabel's not the guy to get up there and completely BS you over, hey, we got some stops on defense. Feel great about that. But there he was. Then again, what's the message to the team now that you've been eliminated from the playoffs? Oh, well, we're, this not about that. It's not. You don't have a message for the team? Aren't you the coach? I had somebody today tell me that it's not the coach's job to motivate the players. That was rich, by the way. I mean, it's like, and then with Paul asking about the offensive line, a perfectly fair question. Given that they ended last season with a horrendous offensive line, which John Robinson got blamed for, and I think fairly. Now, I don't think Vrabel was completely blameless on the offensive line, and I do think Vrabel had some input on some of the decisions they made that were bad. But again, buck stops there with Robinson, his offensive line. Terrible last year. Well, this offensive line's worse. They've got two quarterbacks hurt this year. And when asked about it, Vrabel pleads the fifth. And then when, again, kind of pressed on it a little bit, Vrabel pleads the fifth again. Vrabel is supposed to be a no-nonsense guy. That was like his brand, right? That, these other coaches, they'll try to sweet-talk you. They'll try to BS you. They'll try to wow you. There's nothing fake with Vrabel. He's up. And there he is like a stale fish at the market. Just, well, we got to get healthy, I guess, before we can have a message for the team. I don't think you need to be healthy to hear a message from the coach. And I think in other times, this isn't the first time Vrabel's faced adversity as the coach of the Titans, but I do feel like in other times, Vrabel has had something that is somewhat insightful to say. I remember when he benched Mariota when they were 2-4. And Vrabel talked about how his biggest regret was that he hadn't done a good enough job. And it felt, and it might not have been genuine at all, but it at least felt like he meant it. It felt sincere. This just felt like, God, I'm miserable. Stop asking me questions because I don't have the answers. Which is the bigger problem. That he doesn't have the answers. He doesn't have them. It's been 9 games he's got up there. Hasn't had the answers. Offensive line was horrible in the first game. Special teams were horrible in the first game. Didn't have the answers. Certainly didn't have the answers when they thought they could block Myles Garrett one-on-one and didn't get a field goal that would have kept the game within reach at halftime against Cleveland. Certainly didn't have the answers when we were trying to figure out why Amani Hooker was matched up with Calvin Ridley in the red zone against Jacksonville. Didn't have the answers when they kept running the ball up the middle at the end of the game against the Steelers or why they couldn't get a stop. And certainly didn't have the answers after losing to the JV Texans. Stick a fork in him, he's done. Now, what's most likely to happen, and this wouldn't happen if I owned the team, but what is most likely to happen is, quite frankly, I think Vrabel's going to keep his job. I think Rand Carthon's going to keep his job. I think it's going to be another bad offseason, a bunch of gaslighting bullcrap, and they'll be bad next year, and then everybody will get fired, and it will be inevitable, kind of like the Chargers this past year, when they should have fired Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco after that ridiculous meltdown against Jacksonville last year, but they didn't. Give everybody another shot. And you waste a season and waste a year of your life and waste a year of your fans' money and attention and maybe lose some fans in the process so that, you could say, well, at least we tried. But that's probably what they'll do. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I'm trying to figure out something that, quite frankly, honestly pisses me off more. The more and more this continues and the more you lose, the more and more this makes me mad. And I still don't totally understand it, but we'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about White Bison. That's right. I love White Bison. White Bison is your local coffee shop with food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. Grab a cup of cheer at White Bison. They've got 3 new holiday drinks, a mint mocha frappe, a holiday cookie iced latte, and a ginger snap latte. And buy a $20 gift card for someone special and get $5 for yourself. If you need something a little different, it's easy. Switch it up with a thoughtfully considered selection of refreshing teas, smoothies, and whatever it may be that's perfect for any weather. By the way, our weather is going up and down right now. Order ahead and get rewards. Download the app to order ahead and earn rewards to get 1 free coffee every time you buy 7. Part of White Bison's rewards. Buy 7, get 1 free. That's White Bison with twice daily fresh all day.
Will Levis. I mean, the connection with him and Mike Vrabel, it just seems like they're meant for each other. Okay?
What are you trying to say? They have the same type of personality?
Oh, man.
In what way? In what way? Could you elaborate?
Well, we just, we talk about here, they're meatheads. That's a compliment.
Like we are.
Yeah.
Well, you?
Speak for yourself. Okay. All right, man. I'm trying to.
There you go. That was CBS at halftime. They're like, they're a bunch of meatheads. And Ian said this. I actually thought this last night, that Cedric always calls Vrabel Coach Meathead. And there they are, the CBS crew, where they're like, you know what that is? Ian, you know when I say, I'm like, I shouldn't say this. And then I say it anyways.
When you get a little bit older, you lose that filter. And so Phil Simms, you know.
Yeah, once you got enough money to kind of do whatever you want, which Phil Simms is in, I would assume, in that, situation, it's kind of like, if they fire me, screw them. If I piss this guy off, screw it, who cares? And so Phil Simms said that, and I'm like, but there was one moment in the game that drove me nuts because it's about the 10,000th time I've heard it. Now, I actually think Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta are good on CBS. I like it when they get the Titans games because, one, they've called so many Titans games over the years that they kind of know them, and two, because it's a two-man booth, so there's not always this stepping over one another trying to get a word out, which takes me to something they said yesterday, which was, and I couldn't find it, and I didn't look hard enough, but I remember it. I'm sure you all remember it too. Yesterday during the broadcast, they talked about how Vrabel's been more fun to deal with on the media calls this year than he has in the past. That's fine. That's their business, not mine. That's okay. I would not say that has been my experience with Vrabel, but again, me and them are very different. And then they started talking about, well, it's been a rough couple of years here for Vrabel, but he got the most out of some rosters over the years, and I'm like, why do they keep doing this? And it's not just Spiro and Adam. It's like every national media person, whenever it comes to Vrabel, it's just, oh, man, he's doing such a great job. I mean, they won so many games with Mike Vrabel with a bad roster. Well, then shouldn't Vrabel get blamed for not winning games with a bad roster this year? I don't understand this. Or was it that roster was better than we thought, and guys like A.J. Brown are pretty good, and they carried Mike Vrabel over to the finish line? Maybe. But what drives me crazy is, again, this is a what have you done for me lately kind of league. Bill Belichick's on his way out the door, and he should be. But it's like this idea of, Vrabel's such a great coach. He got him to one AFC championship game. He got them to one AFC championship game. This is not Jimmy Johnson winning Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys. But what I think's happened is I think that the media, they like Vrabel the guy, Vrabel the 3 Super Bowl linebacker of the Patriots. The problem is it doesn't matter how many Super Bowls you won as a player. It has nothing to do with whether or not you can hire assistant coaches and manage the coaching staff, which we know Vrabel can't do. Winning a Super Bowl. I love Deion Branch. He won Super Bowls with Vrabel. I love Deion Branch. I would not make Deion Branch general manager because, again, Deion Branch was a great receiver. Deion Branch is a very smart guy. Deion Branch is a very good person, but Deion Branch has never worked in personnel in the NFL. So I'm not going to make him into the GM. I'm not going to assume that he's good. So what you're telling me is that Vrabel's a great coach. Why? Because when Vrabel had better players, he got more out of the roster. Okay? There's a lot of good coaches that can win when they have good players. Jeff Fisher could win when he had good players. Lovie Smith could win when he had good players. And they won more than Vrabel. Rex Ryan got to 2 AFC championship games, and he's a dope. So what is it, every time national media people serious, that makes Vrabel so special? Like when I think of what makes a good coach, I think, one, can they get their message through to the players? That's the most important thing, and for the most part, over the last 6 years, Vrabel's done that. Now, this year's a little questionable. Tier Tart, I don't think he's blameless in that. Guy doesn't want to work hard. It's the coach's job to get through to the player. But again, I'm not going to just blame that all on Vrabel, even though I do feel like Vrabel went on a PR blitz trying to throw Tart under the bus. But Vrabel can get through the players. Can he manage the coaching staff? I think we know with Vrabel it's a resounding no. Can Vrabel, can he handle the tough times? So far, he hasn't handled it very well. In fact, they promoted him because, again, everybody's convinced everybody that Vrabel's so great. And the offensive line that they've put together was Andre Dillard at left tackle. If they can get the best out of a roster, don't lose seven in a row at the end of the season. They don't lose 4 straight division games, 3 to backup quarterbacks. But that's just me. And every time as a Titan fan, we question Vrabel at all. It's like, oh my God, how dare you question Vrabel? What's the difference between Vrabel and Brandon Staley? I mean, Brandon Staley, defensive coach, his defenses suck, and these, can't win. I'm sorry. Did Vrabel win these Super Bowls that I don't know about, that Brandon Staley didn't? And I know you're going to tell me that Vrabel won a couple divisions. Let's put Patrick Mahomes in his division, see if he wins it. Let's go to Robert, who's up next. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. What's up, Robert?
Hey, what's up, big man?
Go ahead.
Where would you put Vrabel if you ranked NFL coaches? I mean, I kind of got an idea where I'd put him. I'm just curious, where would you put him?
I have no idea. What am I supposed to do, a list right now? Let's see.
I mean,
number 1, number 2,
top 20, bottom 10, bottom 5.
I have no idea where I would put him.
I can't. He's the worst in our division.
I don't know about that. Look, I know Steichen's having a nice year, but we'll see. He already got the quarterback hurt once, and I'm worried he's going to get him hurt again, and that's a big deal, especially when he's the play caller. So I'm not ready to crown him yet. But I have no idea where I would rank Vrabel. Just kind of what's the overall thesis that you have here? Give it to me.
Well, what has Vrabel ever done? People want to rank him as a good coach. He was given a playoff winning team. Very seldom do you get a playoff winning team as your first job or any job, because usually that coach is not fired. We fired ours, hired Vrabel. Vrabel has took the team. They made a slight bump, and then for the last 3 years, we drove off the cliff.
So
I
agree with about 90% of what you're saying.
anything.
I agree with about 90% of what you're saying, which is that Vrabel just really, again, Vrabel has had success here. And I think Vrabel is a lot like Peter Laviolette, right? Laviolette goes to a place, they win immediately. Right now, I saw a power ranking. The Rangers are the second best team in the NHL. They win a lot right away. And then after about 3 or 4 years, he becomes too much of an a-hole, and it's like he's got to go. And I find it hilarious that people that covered both teams said that about Laviolette when he was, he's got a shelf life, he gets to the play, and then now they're like, oh no, Vrabel 3 years ago, he was a good coach. It happens. It happens. These things run their course, and it's okay to move on and to know that, hey, he might be a good coach for a little bit somewhere else. And then he'll screw up the coaching staff there, and he'll piss them off, and he'll be fired and go somewhere else. I mean, if Vrabel got a head coaching job, let's say Vrabel gets fired and he gets the Charger job, and so they don't know anything about your assistant coaches. I mean, Mike Vrabel's staff with the Chargers is going to be Shane Bowen, defensive coordinator, Craig Aukerman, special teams coach, Tim Kelly, offensive coordinator, Keith Carter, offensive line coach. He's going back to the well because he doesn't know anybody. Now, some of that, I think the bigger issue there is his lack of experience, which is not his fault. He didn't hire himself after 1 year of being a coordinator. That's more on you. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. I am very much on the coaching staff for losing to the JV Texans yesterday, but there is one thing that I'm not completely on board with the fans, because a lot of you guys were furious about this yesterday. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737, and of course your phones, 615-737-1025. We will be giving away Preds tickets later today for the Blackhawks game on January 2nd, so be listening for your chance to win those. And tomorrow between 9 and 11, Chase and Big Joe will be giving away tickets to see Kenny Chesney with the wonderful guitar player Danny Rader, and Zach Brown Band at Nissan Stadium Saturday, August 3rd. Each weekday winner will also qualify to win a $250 Electronic Express gift card. That's tomorrow between 9 and 11 with the Chase and Big Joe Show.
The lack of success running on first down, why continue to do that when it wasn't really working for you?
Yeah, again, just trying to get off in a drive. And, there were times where we threw the ball on first down and had success. There were times where we threw it on first down and didn't have success. And, it's all, offensively there wasn't a lot of, we need more positive plays, more conversions, more complementary football.
Do you think that first down running, it was predictable? It seemed like it was today.
I think that when they're, when we don't play well or we don't block or protect, I think that's forces negative plays, a non-efficient play. So, whether we call a run or a pass, we're still going to have to block and execute.
Okay, so Twitter yesterday was furious with Tim Kelly with how much they ran the ball with Henry on first down and they didn't get anything. And gosh, they're so stupid. That was what Twitter was yelling and screaming about. I'm not totally on board with that. I'm going to tell you why they ran the ball with Derrick Henry on first down and why they kept running the ball with Derrick Henry on first down. They ran the ball with Derrick Henry on first down, and they kept running it with Derrick Henry on first down because their best passing against the Texans was off of play action. And the only way that play action works in the NFL is if the other team thinks you're going to run the ball. The reason why I think Tajay Spears sometimes gets a little bit easier of a release with the same offensive line at the line of scrimmage is simply because the other team is not as locked in defensively to everybody collapse on that guy the second it looks like he's getting the ball the way they are with Derrick Henry. That's why if Derrick Henry were to leave as a free agent and Tajay Spears were to be the lead back, I'm not exactly convinced he could be able to do that because when that happens, then Tajay Spears becomes the everybody will collapse on him the second the guy does the ball. You know what I mean? They're going to change the way they play defense against Spears and without Henry. So in order for play action to work and be effective, they have to think you're going to run the ball. In order for them to think you're going to have to run the ball, you have to use the threat of running it, which means you have to run it. That's why Treylon Burks was so wide open on those play action passes that they threw for them to hit across the middle. And I'm going to defend Tim Kelly again because the interception that Levis threw on the sideline was a perfect example of the entire team being worried about Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins, and Levis rolls and Treylon Burks is wide open for a touchdown and Levis doesn't throw it. And if Levis throws the ball, you win the game. Because at that point, at 20 points, Case Keenum's not going to be able to lead the Texans back with a junior varsity group down by 17. And I'm not blaming Levis for why you lost, or I'm not saying that they don't need to coach Levis to be able to make the right decision, but I understand why they ran the ball. I understand why it wasn't effective. The Texans are second in the NFL in run defense. Your offensive line is an unmitigated disaster, which is not the coordinator's fault. So I get those things. Now, at the end of the game, Tim Kelly did some boneheaded crap that I'm telling you, I'm not as mad at Tim Kelly as you guys are. Again, I think the bigger issue is Vrabel and the offensive line coach. But anywho, when it comes to Tim Kelly's play calling, I could not believe 3:03 to go. Keenum connects with Noah Brown for a touchdown. Houston scores. The game's tied at 16. 1st and 10 at the Tennessee 25. They run an end around with Treylon Burks for 2 yards. Now, what every offensive coordinator, coach, whatever, what they'll always tell you is they'll always say that, well, you just don't like that play because it didn't work. 1, no duh. 2, you already did this against the Steelers and it didn't work. So I think we can be mad about that. So I think that was a stupid call. Then Levis has a ball incomplete for Hopkins. He has a great throw to Chris Moore for a first down. Then it's 1st and 10 at the Tennessee 39. 2:05 to go in the game. So you right now are in a great spot. You are at the 39-yard line, so you're about 25 yards away from Nick Folk field goal range to set yourself up to win the game on a field goal. Levis has a second, fourth quarter comeback and, game-winning drive in a row. Then they ran this stupid direct snap to Derrick Henry that, one, I don't even think the players knew what was going on because on that play, everybody was so discombobulated. And 2, it was Derrick Henry in the shotgun at his own 39-yard line with Will Levis to his immediate left like a running back. Now, if there was something to this play, right, like Henry runs it, pitches it back to Levis, who turns around and throws it down the field to a streaking Chris Moore, that's one thing. If it is around the goal line and they direct snap it to Derrick so that Derrick can just kind of get the ball and go and that there's not any transition of handing it, that's another thing. But you didn't need that. What you needed to do is you needed to stick the play action passing game and let Levis throw the ball to Chris Moore or throw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins because that was the only thing that was working for you. Not let's try to trick him with Derrick in the shotgun at the 39. Well, you can let Derrick throw it. Congratulations. Derrick completed a ball for 6 yards to Trevon Wesco. Instead, Derrick runs it, You hadn't been able to run the ball all day. Derek runs it from his own 39, and he doesn't gain anything. And I also don't even know what they were doing on the play. I don't think they knew what they were doing on the play. The guy from the outside of the right tackle was the one who ended up making the tackle, and Radens was running to the left. So, I mean, unless they're pulling the tackle, I don't know what they were doing there. So, at the end of the game, I thought Tim Kelly got stupid. You know, he's trying to send 5 guys out in the pass pattern when you know you can't pass block against that team. That was stupid. But as far as the biggest criticism of the why run the ball, why run the ball, why run the ball, I do understand that. Let's go back to your phones. So, the Colonel calls in, and every time he does this, we know who this is. This is Tommy Canavy, we assume. This is Tommy Canavy, who was Vrabel's first strength and conditioning coach, who got fired after Vrabel's first year. Calls in under a fake name every time. Always wants to talk bad about Vrabel. He's up next. Thank you for calling. Tommy, I will take your call if you just admit who you are and just say what you think.
Have you ever been whipped and quartered by a Marine sergeant?
I mean, I think you know the answer to that is no.
And why do you think they will keep Vrabel after what they did to Malarkey?
Well, I just think that they'll keep Vrabel because everybody's convinced them Vrabel's a good coach, and everybody convinced them that Malarkey was a good coach who could not take them to the promised land. I don't think those things are true, but that's what I think the general consensus was, and they got convinced that's what it was, and they operated accordingly.
Stop dancing around and tell me what you think.
I just told you!
You are the only member of the media that's not afraid around here. You have balls the size of grapefruits.
Thank you. But again, I told you. Thank you for your call, Tommy.
Nice little apricots.
Tommy, thank you. I told you what I think. When you're like, you know, why did they fire Malarkey when Malarkey, like, I think it's pretty obvious now Malarkey got a raw deal, but why won't they fire Vrabel when he loses and they fired Malarkey when he won? The reason is that they had been convinced, whether it was by John Robinson, whether it was by the fan base who hated Malarkey, whatever it was, they had been convinced that Mike Malarkey was a good coach, but he could not take this team to the promised land. Regardless of whether or not that's true, I don't necessarily believe that kind of stuff, but that's what people said at the time. I didn't believe it then. I certainly don't believe it now, but that's what they believed, so they did. Now what's happened with Vrabel, and I go back to the national media and even some of the local media. I mean, I had somebody today that was like, basically said none of this is Vrabel's fault at all, which I can understand the idea that not all of this is Vrabel's fault. I mean, I got Paul blowing up my phone about what John Robinson drafted Isaiah Wilson, as if John Robinson hasn't already been punished and fired for that, or as if the Titans are never allowed to bust on a pick, and if the Titans bust on a pick, then God forbid they ever, try to fix the pick that they missed on. I don't understand, but again, different story for a different day. But I had somebody today, there's no way you can tell me none of this is Vrabel's fault. But I literally had somebody tell me today that covers the team, none of this is Vrabel's fault. So for whatever reason that is, I think that they've convinced ownership, or they will convince ownership that Vrabel is not at all, or they think that Vrabel's not at all the problem, and that Andre Dillard is John Robinson's fault, even though John Robinson didn't sign Andre Dillard. He didn't give Aaron Brewer $4.3 million. He didn't draft Skoronski, who's been terrible. And that'll be, the narrative, and I just don't agree with it, but that's why I think it's happening. Then you tell me what you really think. I just told you. Doesn't mean that you don't like it, but come on now. Ron's up next on Vrabel. Thank you for waiting, and thank you for calling. Go ahead, Ron.
Oh, yeah. I just wondered if the reason that you dog Coach Vrabel so much is because he humiliated you in the press conference a couple of months ago.
How did he humiliate me?
Well, he told you to grow up, and act like a man. And
I would say that I feel pretty, as far as the press conference stuff's concerned, thank you for your call. As far as the press conference stuff's concerned, I don't really care about that. In fact, if anything, I think I feel kind of vindicated because one of our big issues in the press conferences was Craig Aukerman. And, well, I hate to say check the scoreboard on that, but you can go ahead and look at that one. My issue with Vrabel is that they are losing. And that not only are they losing, but that I believe he is at least somewhat culpable for the fact that they are losing. And I don't think he has any answers to get them out of this. That's my problem with Vrabel. The idea that it's personal or that I care about that or that it's anything more than I want my football team to win, and I just don't think this dude is up to the task of turning this football team around, no matter how much Diana Rossini tells us about the steak dinners he enjoys. I mean, that I don't care about any of it. I care about football and winning, and that's how I feel the way I feel. And I just don't understand how many people out there can't separate the two, that they can't say, it's like, oh no, Jared is mad that the football team sucks, but it can't be that is his problem with the coach. It has to be something else. I don't get that. I never have, and I'm sure I probably never will. Like Jerry Stackhouse, right? Like we've had our moments on Twitter or whatever where Jerry Stackhouse, my problem with Jerry Stackhouse, when they last year had beaten Kentucky 3 times, I was like, hey, this team, I know that they were bad at the beginning of the year, but they should be in the NCAA tournament, even though Jerry Stackhouse and I had our issue. Now, they can't win a game. He should be fired. He should be fired right now. It's not personal. It's the game. It's winning and losing. And it's, can you fix it? And in the case of both Jerry Stackhouse and Mike Vrabel, I think the answer is no. 615-737-1025. Derrick Henry set a terrible NFL record yesterday, and I feel bad for him. I also don't think he's the same back that he was 2 years ago before he broke his foot. But he said something yesterday that I heard that I'm like, man. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
You've never had a game since you become a starter that you didn't get over 10 yards. At least you had 9 today. Hearing that, I see you reacting.
Yeah, it's tough. Definitely tough, man. Definitely tough. I don't really have no words. Just wasn't good enough, and tough.
Poor Derrick Henry. I mean, quite frankly, his rushing performance yesterday was horrendous, but I think it has more to do with the offensive line than it has to do with Derrick Henry. As of right now, they are terrible at left tackle. They are terrible at left guard. They are terrible at center. They are terrible at right guard, and they keep switching out the right guard, and they are terrible at right tackle. And I thought the one thing that was very telling yesterday was the one run that Derrick had that was a decent enough run was where the play was designed for everybody to go to the right, and then Derrick Henry turned around and ran to the left. And that was the best run he had, where it was like, oh, they're blocking to the right, I'll run to the left. That's how bad it was. Now, he's not the same Derrick Henry because there are a couple of arm tackles where he gets brought down that I'm used to Derrick, just kind of powering through, and he's not doing that anymore. And he's not breaking big gains, and he's not. But again, I think it is more about the offensive line than it is Henry. Because if it was just a Derrick Henry problem, then I don't think that Tajay Spears, who is a decent enough runner, and I thought ran the ball really hard against the Colts when Derrick Henry went out of the game, and I thought did an effective job. Tajay Spears isn't going to run for 30 yards at 3.3 yards a crack if it's just a Derrick problem. I also, as we went over in the Dolphins game, when they were on Hard Knocks and they all kept talking about Derrick Henry this, Derrick Henry that, I mean, it's very obvious to me that Derrick Henry was the focal point of what the Texans were going to stop, and they did. And all of this changes, by the way, if Levis hits the ball on the sideline to Burks, because now they've hit it to Burks 3 times. Now they're hitting the ball down the field. Now they have to back up a little bit, but he didn't. But I thought something that was incredibly noble of Derrick Henry, and part of the reason why I think every single person that's around here has respect for Derrick Henry is about yesterday when he was asked about his frustrations, and he came as close to pointing the finger as I think he ever has.
At the end of the day, this is what it is. I'm always going to continue to work, always going to work to continue to improve, never going to point the finger, never going to blame anybody else. If anything, I'm going to criticize myself first before I do anybody else, and, that's just what it is this year.
I just laughed so hard when he's like, I'm never going to point the finger. To me, that is the closest Derrick Henry has ever come to pointing the finger, where it's like, I'm always going to work harder. I'm always going to get prepared for the next game. I'm never going to point the finger because he could. Now, again, he's not the same back that he was in 2020 and 2019 and 2021. He's not the same back. That's okay. But it's not like Derrick Henry is the problem. It's not. They cannot run. They can't run block. They can't pass block. That is not Derrick Henry's fault. And so, I mean, when he's got 4, there's one where they hand the ball off to him. There's 3 guys right in the backfield, 7 yards deep in the line of scrimmage. But again, it's really hard to dress up that stat line. It is what it is. Now, the one thing, again, when I defend Tim Kelly for the running it with Derrick Henry on first down, even though they weren't picking up much, the one thing I will say is that if they had done that with Tajay Spears, it takes away the threat of play action because they don't account for Spears the way they account for Henry. But Spears ran the ball for 30 yards yesterday. It's not like Spears is running the ball for 60 yards and Derrick's running the ball for 9 yards, and it's like, oh, yeah, you really got to – to me it is – when one's bad, they end up both being bad. And they end up both being bad because the line's bad. I thought Spears ran the ball effectively against the Colts. Derrick ran the ball great against the Colts. Let's go to Terry, who's up next here on a Titans Monday. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Terry.
Yes, sir. Well, Henry's supposed to be the super back, and Tajay Spears is beating him on yardage and not being tackled in the before he even gets to the line. I mean, Henry is definitely not the Henry was. He's getting worse, my opinion.
Okay, so I want to explain to people exactly how this works because I do understand the concept there. Thank you, Terry. Because I do kind of understand the approach here, right? Which is, well, Derek ran the ball for 9 yards and Tajay ran the ball for 30 yards, so Tajay is better than Derek, which is basically what that last call was, right? So this is not Madden football where one team, asks Madden what play to run, and it's like, all right, let's run engage 8 on this play. What happens is when Derrick Henry's in the game, and usually Derrick Henry, because, again, you can't run block, is accompanied by Trevon Wesco. When they're in the game, the other team has a pretty good feeling that you're going to run. And so what they do is they put in their run package. And so they are prepared to sit back and say, all right, we are coming after Derrick Henry. The way to beat this is what they did early when they threw the ball to Treylon Burks for those big gains, which is play action pass. So the linebackers all come up thinking Derrick's going to get the ball. They all come up, and then boom, you hit them down the field for 20 or 30 yards. This is why I've told you guys Will Levis needs a big, young, fast, playmaking receiver so that there can be a guy that they can say, hey, go deep, and they can go deep. Chris Sanders on the early Titans teams, that was his job. Was, all right, Eddie George is carrying this team. Derek Mason is a reliable wide receiver. They can throw it to him deep, but they kind of short. He can run after the catch. He can wide check. They drop it off to him short. Chris Sanders' job was to go deep so that if everybody was going to try to come up and stop Eddie George and Frank Wycheck, well, then Steve McNair was going to chuck the ball down the field, and Chris Sanders, with his Olympic-level track speed, was going to be able to catch the ball, run to the end zone for a touchdown. That's why in 2000, he had 6 catches over 35 yards. They don't have that. And then when they do dial it up like they did this past week, Treylon Burks, the quarterback doesn't find him. I mean, that's what this is. So when you say, Spears, he's better, they're not playing the same defense for Tajay Spears because they're not afraid of Tajay Spears taking a game over. They're afraid of Derrick Henry taking the game over. DeJuan is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, DeJuan?
What's up, man? I think you're saying it wrong. I think the style is different. So when you got Derrick Henry in the game, that big, powerful running back, he can't dodge those tackles like Tajay can. It's not that Tajay's better. I just think the style that Tajay runs is better for a weak line that we got. So, I still think Tajay's good. That Swifty running back is what we need because you got the big Frankenstein in the back. He can't dodge them tackles like that. He got to get past the line of scrimmage. So I just think going forward we need to figure out, do we want a power scheme or do we need that quick back scheme? But I like the quick back scheme.
I just don't think the quick back thing, thank you for your call, DeJuan. I think if you sit there and you say, okay, we're gonna run the ball primarily with Tajay Spears, I think you're going to get the same results. You guys might be right. I might be wrong. I think you're going to get the same results because I just think that once the team says, okay, they're treating him like Henry, then we're going to treat him like Henry. It'll basically be the same. Again, we played the cut before the Steelers game where Mike Tomlin was talking about the Titans offense and he spent 45 seconds on DeAndre Hopkins, a minute and a half on Derrick Henry, and then the rest of the offense was, and Will's got the other eligibles that he likes throwing the ball to, like Okonkwo, and so we have to worry about those guys. And that was it. Take Derrick Henry out, now we are going to spend some more time developing a defense on Tajay Spears. That's just me. I could totally be wrong. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I have said that after the game on Sunday, losing to a JV Texans team, I would officially, as soon as the season is over, fire the coach, fire the GM, and start anew. And there is one thing that I can't get over. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you'll excuse it. I don't know. But I can't. We'll get to that next. On a Titans Monday, it is Stillman and Company. It is the twice daily 12 days of Christmas. That's right. Get ready for 12 days of discounts and freebies, plus contests to win fun prizes and gift cards too. Download the app and register today. And Twice Daily has you covered with made-to-order selections for breakfast, lunch, and everything in between. It pays to be a member, so be sure to download the Twice Daily app and join the loyalty program. That's right. You know I love the Twice Daily loyalty program because you can get what you crave at Twice Daily, but you can also earn rewards with every visit to Twice Daily. That's right. Twice Daily is fabulous. Now, I do not believe, I'm pulling through the game book right now as we speak, I do not believe that the Titans scored in the last 2 minutes of either half. Darn. So I do not think there is a free half sub. But if you are a member of the loyalty program with Twice Daily and the Titans score in the final 2 minutes, that's right, they score in the final 2 minutes in either half against the Seahawks, you get a free half sub in the app the next day. That's right. So you've got to download the Twice Daily app and join the loyalty program and unlock special discount savings and so much more. Twice Daily, fresh all day. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical Studios on a Titans Monday. Titans falling to the preseason Houston Texans, the junior varsity squad that they put out there yesterday. No C.J. Stroud, no Tank Dell, no Nico Collins, no Will Anderson Jr., no George Fant, no Titus Howard. No, I could go on and on and on. And you still lost. And you're officially out of the playoffs, and the reason that you're out of the playoffs, quite frankly, is because you can't block. Again, with every single one of these games, including yesterday's, we could go back for 55 different reasons and say, well, if this hadn't happened, they would have won. So if Tannehill had hit Chigakonkwo in the first game against New Orleans, they probably would have won. The problem is we don't know if Chig would have caught it, now knowing what we know now. But also, if Will Levis hits Treylon Burks yesterday, you win. That doesn't mean that in between, the offensive line was not horrendous. In fact, it was horrendous. It was horrendous against New Orleans. It was horrendous against San Diego, L.A. It was horrendous against the Chargers. It was horrendous against the Browns. It was not bad against the Bengals. It was awful against Indianapolis and even worse against the Ravens. Then you had the bye week. It wasn't bad against the Falcons. In fact, it was pretty good. Again, another week where Andre Dillard played left tackle and somehow, some way, it wasn't actually that bad. Then it was bad again. It was bad against Pittsburgh. It was bad against Jacksonville. It was bad against Tampa. It's been bad. 7 sacks yesterday. And if I owned the team, I would fire the head coach and the general manager because of it. Because of all the issues that had to get worked out when we put this commission together, when we took a 7-win football team from last year that had been competing at a high level, and we said, okay, we've got to fix this football team, the number one thing that came up was offensive line. In fact, the reason why I thought this team was going to be good this upcoming season is for no other reason. I didn't think it was possible that the offensive line could be any worse than it was last year when you had Dennis Daly at left tackle. Somehow, some way, it is. The Titans used the 11th overall draft choice on a lineman, and he's not very good. The Titans gave a center $4.3 million, and he can't snap. And see, what's funny is a lot of people will sit there and say, well, this is John Robinson's fault because 3 years ago, John Robinson missed on a first-round draft choice. Well, John Robinson's already been fired. It's not John Robinson's fault that the Titans decided that they were going to go with Chris Hubbard as their right tackle this year. It's not John Robinson's fault that the Titans gave Andre Dillard $29 million. No, that's these guys' fault. And so there's no way around it to me. They started the offseason and said, we've got to fix the offensive line. This is what they gave you. This is so bad that I literally pulled up a text from my phone to my best friend's dad after the third practice. This was Saturday, July 29th at 11:44 a.m. And again, as you all know, I'm a Titans fan, so I do use the we here when I don't use it on the air. On Saturday, July 29th at 11:44 a.m., I sent a text that said, they haven't put the pads on, but our offensive line is horrible. I knew after 3 days. I'm like, oh boy, this is bad. And what did Vrabel do? Deny. In fact, here is the Mike Vrabel year in review on the offseason, going all the way back to the combine up until yesterday.
We've got some needs and some holes. I've told you that. I've asked them to look for players that have an element of speed, violence, and versatility, and that's what I want to look for. And look for offensive linemen that can protect the quarterback. You know, whether that's Ryan, whether that's Malik, that's Josh Dobbs, whoever that may end up being. Those are things that we have to do a better job at.
Andre Dillard, is a player that we feel like his best football is in front of them with a new opportunity. Very skilled pass protector, which is something that we have to improve on. We have to be able to protect our quarterback. Bad things happen. We've all seen it. We've always talked about it. So I was excited to be able to add him.
How nervous are you with the offensive line depth, given Nick's suspension and where this team stands with the offensive line?
I'm not nervous, you know what I mean? But we have to be better. We have to be better up front, and we got to protect our quarterback. That's what happens in this league. When your quarterback gets hit, they turn the ball over, they get hurt. So I'm not nervous. I'm excited to see guys compete. Well, I mean, I think that group, as a whole, we have to start better, and we need to, make sure that we're improving. And whether we game plan for what New England was in, that doesn't matter. We need to go out and play better and use our rules and block better and finish better. So I would say that entire group has to have a big week.
The offensive line has struggled blocking all season long. It's not a new problem. We experienced that last year. Why wasn't there more done in the offseason to address that position group?
Well, I would disagree that they've struggled. They've struggled on third down, hasn't been our best.
Where do you feel like this offseason maybe you and Rand maybe miscalculated on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think there's been too much said, about that, particular spot. I mean, I think that, Rand and I and Chad and A-Rob and the coaching staff, we'll focus on, personnel and player acquisition when we get there. Right now it's focusing on, getting a meeting that has the corrections and, moving forward here to Jacksonville and what we have.
Understanding that guys getting hurt is part of it. Is there any sense of organizational guilt for what was assembled to be in front of your two quarterbacks, that they've both gotten hurt?
Nobody likes to see any player get hurt, and the responsibility to protect the guy with the ball, whether that's the quarterback, the running back, the receiver, kickers. So we have to do a better job of protecting all of them.
How about the level beyond that in terms of rosters?
We have to do everything that we can to continue to protect the guy with the football.
Okay, so we went from, I've told them we got to get offensive linemen in here to protect Ryan, Malik, or Josh Dobbs. Then we went to, hey, we got Andre Dillard. He's going to be a good pass protector. His best football's in front of him. Yes. Then I'm not nervous about the offensive line. I'm excited about the offensive line. Then at the end of training camp, it went to, those guys need to have a big week. Then when Caroline asked about why wasn't more done to address it in the offseason after they got the first quarterback hurt, he disagreed with her. Then when I asked after the Jacksonville game, he said, too much has been made of that. Then yesterday with Paul, after the game, just ignoring it. The idea that it wasn't obvious that they had to fix the offensive line. And what I find laughable is the idea that the Titans couldn't do more on the offensive line. The Denver Broncos had a terrible offensive line, and while the Denver Broncos are far from perfect, they have a much better offensive line this year. The Kansas City Chiefs redid their offensive line in 1 year. The Cincinnati Bengals have a much better offensive line after adding Orlando Brown Jr. left tackle in free agency. It's amazing, right? These other teams seem to be able to do it, but not you. John Robinson is a convenient excuse. Did John Robinson blow it with Isaiah Wilson and Dylan Radins? Absolutely. Was it just incompetent to cut Roger Saffold and try to replace him with Aaron Brewer? Sure. Was it ridiculous that the Titans didn't tender a contract to David Quessenberry after he admirably played right tackle for them in 2021? It was. But John Robinson's already been fired. So it's not like I'm arguing that John Robinson didn't play a role in why your offensive line was so bad 2 years ago. But John Robinson's not responsible for Andre Dillard. The commission of Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon is. John Robinson is not responsible for the 11th overall draft choice that you used at guard who got freaking worked yesterday. The commission is. John Robinson is not responsible for Aaron Brewer at $4.3 million. The commission is. Daniel Brunskill, not John Robinson's addition. And if you want to blame him for Dylan Radins, who's their third right tackle this season, sure. You see what I'm saying? We didn't think it could be worse than it was last year. Vrabel said it had to be better than it was last year. They've already allowed more sacks this year than they did last year. I'd fire them. They had one job, or at least one focus of the entire list of what to do to get the Titans right. And again, a football team is not just one part of it. It's not like, okay, we can ignore having to upgrade on defense, or David Long Jr. is leaving in free agency, or we need a wide receiver. You can't just completely ignore that, I understand. But their number one priority was to fix the offensive line, and they made it worse. And I'm trying to figure out, again, how is this John Robinson's fault that it got worse? It can't be. It's the commission's fault. They had one priority, and they failed massively. And I don't need to give them another year to fail again, because they haven't shown me any sense that they have an idea of what to do to fix that offensive line. Vrabel's answer at offensive line coach was to promote some Scarbini with no NFL experience outside of working for Vrabel and Keith Carter to head offensive line coach. You know what the old man used to tell me about why they always had good offensive lines? And I do feel like this is credible, since when I was a kid, we never worried about the offensive line. And sure, you may say, well, that's easy with Bruce Matthews, but Bruce Matthews retired. And they replaced him with some guy I'd never heard of named Gennaro DiNapoli. And then he left. And they replaced him with Justin Hardwick. And then he left. And they replaced him with Eugene Amano. And they went out and they added guys like Benji Olsen and Zach Pillar. And none of those guys were first-round picks. Well, what they did, because, again, the old man told me this, was anytime they were interested in an offensive lineman, they would have Mike Munchak evaluate the player. Then they would bring the player in and spend time with Mike Munchak. And Mike Munchak, a great offensive line coach, knew if they could play, knew if he could coach them, and also knew if they would fit within the room. Are the Titans not doing that? Is this guy that Vrabel hired that was, I think, like an NAIA college head coach before he got fired from the NAIA job? Can he do the same things Mike Munchak could do? I don't know. So my answer is to clean house. You had one major job. You made it a priority. You said it was your priority. And it's worse than last season's. It's worse than Dennis Daly. It's worse than that patchwork crew that, along with the A.J. Brown trade, probably got the general manager fired. And I'm not saying they should rehire him back. But I am saying that they get the blame for the line that they put together. And it's now the line that they won't take the blame for, or they won't talk about. 615-737-1025. A lot of you want to weigh in, so we'll get to that. 615-737-1025. And boy, Titans Twitter got mad at me yesterday about pointing out what was beyond obvious. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
On 3rd and 7, Levis is lit up. Khalil Davis making first contact. Huge play for Houston's defense.
There's nothing fancy about this. This is just straight power inside from Davis. He's just gonna play the role of a bully and run over. I believe that's Skoronski. He's just gonna run right over him and get to Will Levis. Levis has zero chance.
37 seconds left. Tennessee working with all 3 timeouts. Levis is buried. Malik Collins.
Spiro, watch the violence that Malik Collins plays with. Look at how he just violently clubs Skoronski, number 77. Just swats him out of the way and then pulls Levis to the ground.
There you go. 2 sacks directly given up to Skoronski, where even Adam Archuleta's like, man, he just ragdolled him. And I don't even know those guys he's talking about. Those guys are not the 11th overall pick in the draft. So Titans fans got so mad because yesterday I tweeted out that Peter Skoronski might be a bust. And it was like, oh, no, you don't know anything about ball. You don't understand. I'm like, let me tell you something. I worked with a former general manager who not only was a former general manager, but is the best general manager this organization has ever had, and always had good offensive line play. Always had good offensive line play. And he told me when it came to the offensive line and drafting a guard, he said, if you're going to draft a guy in the top 10, and Skoronski was 11, which is close enough. If you're going to draft a guy in the top 10, he better go right to the Pro Bowl and onto the Hall of Fame. Basically saying that he ought to be Bruce Matthews because there are so few guards in the NFL that win games for their teams. For instance, Chris Lindstrom of the Atlanta Falcons is the number 1 guard in the NFL. He's an all-pro, he's a former first-round choice, and he makes the most money of any guard in the NFL. How many games does he win for the Falcons? Guard is a complementary piece, just like safety. If it's Sean Taylor, that's one thing. If not, get it in the 5th round. And Skoronski can't run block, and he can't pass block, and everybody makes excuses for him all the time. They blame the center for him. I'm like, I thought the center was the guy you guys used to make a bunch of excuses for. Now you don't make any excuses for him. Now they're blaming the left tackle. Now that I can understand. But I never understood the draft choice to begin with for a guard. I would have put him at tackle. They didn't want to do that. They knew better than I did. They had Andre Dillard. And now he's playing guard, and he sucks. Like right now, he sucks. That doesn't mean that he can't get better. But I don't see anything that makes me think that Peter Skoronski is going to be anything more than at best average, and right now he's not that. And people get mad at me. They're like, you don't know, you're just saying I'm like, I don't know, man. When some guy I've never heard of goes right by him and sacks the quarterback, I don't think, again, I'm not an offensive line guru. I don't think that that's good offensive line play. This is me. I don't think that. But what do I know? Vrabel's the expert. He's the one that at the beginning of the offseason said they had to improve the offensive line play, and he got you Andre Dillard. He and Rand Carthon, they collaborated to get you Andre Dillard. Maybe if they had spent some more time looking at offensive linemen or interviewing offensive line coaches instead of firing the 50-year equipment manager, then maybe they would have gotten somebody that can block. But as of right now, they got somebody at left tackle that can't block. He's on the bench. They got a guy with the 11th pick at left guard, and he can't block. And the guy that's playing left tackle for you right now, when they drafted him, they put on TV, led the Big Ten in sacks. And that's who's playing left tackle for you. Look, man, don't be mad at me that Skoronski might suck. I mean, the Chicago Bears picked an offensive lineman 1 pick before you picked Skoronski, and they had him in their backyard, and they were like, no thanks. That's a bad sign. And what it goes to is incompetence, which is my problem with the offensive line. Let's go to Adam in Portland. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam's been waiting patiently. What's up, Adam?
Hey, man. Yeah, I'm totally in sync with you on this. I will say this, like, there's something you said, I think it was a week or two ago, Titans fans, we didn't want to win that game. There's no need to win that game. You're going to end up at 500 and end up with like the 12th pick. So you don't want that. You want a higher pick so you get a better player.
I mean, you're not guaranteed to get a better player. You pick Peter Skoronski, he's not very good. Baltimore picked Zay Flowers, he's very good.
I understand. In principle. Anyway, in theory. So what I'm saying though, Jared, is that the whole thing we were playing for is not only draft capital, but just keeping Will Levis upright. That was it. And you almost got him killed. So I know coaches don't like playing the young quarterback and nobody wants to talk about it, but they don't play him because that's their last year. Like, they get one more year with the young quarterback. And Vrabel almost got his quarterback killed yesterday. So I think I've been out on him a long time. I hope they fire him. I don't know what you got to do to get fired by an owner or a GM in this building. But
the last guy got to the divisional round of the playoffs, so I guess do that. That'll get you fired around here. I don't know. Adam, thank you for your call. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I've told you, the offensive line is reason enough. I mean, I think they've done plenty of other stupid things, right? You know, like what happened on draft night, whether it was Vrabel or Rand, whoever, couldn't shut their mouth to Diana Rossini, it was probably Vrabel, since Vrabel constantly runs his mouth to Diana Rossini unless she's stalking him to figure out the tomahawk steaks that he's eating for dinner on Saturday nights, which she wrote about in The Athletic, which is a different discussion we'll get into. But I mean, it got leaked out there to Diana Rossini that you wanted C.J. Stroud. You didn't get C.J. Stroud. They got C.J. Stroud because you couldn't shut your mouth. That isolated incident is reason enough to fire somebody. Like, I'll tell you right now, if Floyd was a general manager and the head coach, and again, we assume that this was Vrabel, but it could have been Rand. I don't know. It could have been both of them. I don't know. But if Floyd was a general manager and the head coach blabbed about who they were going to take and they didn't get him, they'd fire that head coach. Fired. Not even a question. He'd fire that guy. And so, like, the offensive line is just what takes the cake as far as the screw-ups are concerned. But there's plenty all across the board. The Bayard pay cut thing was a disaster. It was a disaster. And so, I've told you, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. They fire them, move on, go on, it's over. But again, maybe they're thinking different. I don't know. Again, Diana's the one who says that they're not going to change anything, but we know where Diana's bread is buttered. So take that with a grain of salt. Plus, the Titans have lied directly to our face before about the coach, so also keep that in mind. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We are right to your phones next. 615-737-1025 on a Titans Monday after losing to the JV Texans. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. talked about guys and how much you expect out of the defensive line because of the money that you pay those players. Using the 11th pick on Peter, are you disappointed with where his play is right now?
No, I think Peter's been working hard, and again the player evaluation. We're putting a team together, and Peter works. Peter's improved. Not sure what the first part of your question had anything to do with Peter, but we're just okay. We all have high expectations. That's the nature of this business, and we understand that, and we need to continue to raise expectations with whoever's out there.
There you go. That was Vrabel on Skoronski. Ian, first of all, do you agree? Again, we're not trained like Vrabel is to understand how to find the Andre Dillards of the world, but do you agree that Peter Skoronski's doing well and improving?
I don't know about improving. It doesn't look like he's improving that much. Seems about the same. Doing well, I'd say he's hanging in there.
Do you also think he doesn't know what I mean when I said that the 11th overall pick and the idea that there should be higher expectations involved there?
Well, I think he kind of got it as the expectations part goes, but when you start, bringing up the money, he probably understood maybe.
He knew.
I think he probably knew.
When he talks about the defensive line with Simmons and I would say Tart, who's now a Texan, by the way, but with Simmons and Autry and Landry and Key, he talks about the money we pay them.
Your best players have to be your best players.
I.e., we pay you money, we need you to play. Well, when you draft somebody 11th, you need them to play. And Skoronski, right now, he sucks. Like, right now, he sucks. And is it the fact that the center next to him's bad? Is it the left tackle's bad? Is it that he should be playing left tackle? Is it the line coach? I don't know. But he's bad. And he was the 11th overall choice in the draft. And he should be good. Because if you're going to take a guard, Ray Guy, I think, is an example of this. He's the only punter in the history of the NFL to be taken in the first round. And I believe he's the only punter that's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Why? Because Ray Guy won games. Very few punters are that good. He was. So the Raiders took him in the first round. If you're going to take somebody 11th that's a guard, he better be a freaking good guard. And he's not. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kelly's been waiting patiently. He's up next on Ownership. Thank you for calling. What's up, Kelly?
Hey, Jared. Thanks for taking my call. I called in, midway through the season earlier, and I mentioned that more blame should be on Amy Adams Strunk, and you said right church, wrong pew. So now I'm glad that with your take today that you're saying Vrabel should be gone, Rain should be gone. So I would like to see more onus on ownership, especially if you think that the firing should happen, but they won't happen. So when is the blame going to be more on ownership?
I think ownership is complicit in the commission and how stupid that is, and taking a guard 11th overall. And I certainly think ownership's complicit. I just don't know, what do you want to do about it? What are we going to march and protest and demand that they sell the team? They're not going to do that. Plus, they thought, here's what's crazy. Kelly, thank you for your call. When they decided that they were going to lock John Robinson and Mike Vrabel together in January of 2022, which was not that long ago, when they decided that's what they were going to do, they had the right idea, which is you guys are in this together, period. So there's no power struggle. This was Mike's idea. This was John's idea. This was, you guys are in it together, and you guys are going to be in it together. Then John Robinson traded A.J. Brown, a move that I know Amy Adams Strunk was on board with. But they traded A.J. Brown. The offensive line was terrible. I think the Titans were banking on Radunz and Farley. They were both terrible, and I think that was what pushed them over the edge. Because TD reported at the time when Robinson got fired that Farley and Radunz played a big role in that, and I get it. Now, I would have waited until the end of the year to have those discussions and fire the general manager when the team was in first place. But again, that's a different discussion for a different day. But as soon as they made that choice to put all the blame on Robinson and to keep Vrabel, what they did was they deviated from the original idea, which was these guys are in it together. Now it's he's gone, Mike's in it. And we're going to get somebody to go with Mike. But it wasn't somebody who was Mike approved. It wasn't somebody that was Mike picked. In fact, I'll just say this. Word on the street is that, well, I'll hold off on this for a second. Maybe tomorrow. But I do, the shotgun marriage thing doesn't work, right? It doesn't. Why would it work? Like, I'll tell you this right now. I'll give you some free advice for Rand Carthon right here, just to show you that I'm on his side, which I'm really not because I'd fire him. But just here's some free advice. If I was Rand Carthon, I'd be throwing Vrabel under the bus right now to the owner. Because here's what's going to happen. If they commission this up again for another year and they draft some more Peter Skoronskis and this offensive line sucks as bad as I think it's going to suck if they get another shot at this, they're both getting fired next year. If this is the same level of incompetence that we lived through last offseason, this offseason, they're both fired at the end of next year. And, we just wasted a year like the Predators did last year. And that's fine. They're entitled to it. But you do whatever you want. But Rand Carthon's not getting another job after that. Like, he's not getting another general manager job if the Titans don't get any better. And then by the end of next year, there's still questions on Levis, and the team's still not very good, and the head coach is fired, and Vrabel's getting another job. Rand's not. GMs don't get other jobs. So my advice to Rand would be, I would be talking to the owner saying, hey, man, and bring receipts. But I'd be saying, hey, this guy needs to be our coach, not this guy. Vrabel did this wrong. Vrabel's coaches did that wrong. I can't work with this is just not. If you want us to be good, we got to go get Johnny to be the coach. That's what I would do if I'm Rand Carthon, because that would be survival for Rand. Because as much as the Titans can say they're in it together, they're really not. It doesn't make any sense for a shotgun marriage for these guys to be in it together. It doesn't make any sense for Rand to waste his career on a guy that he didn't know before he took the job. But to answer your question about ownership, that's where I think ownership is complicit. They had the right idea at the beginning, which was Mike and John are in it together. And then once you give up on Mike and John, get rid of Mike and John and go get somebody else to go get their own coach. But instead, it's like, well, he thinks this, and they think this, and they collaborate, and then, he gets mad about this, and then he says that he's not mad about that, and then they sit there and they talk about, that's not going to work. Let's go to Dustin, who's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling. What's up, Dustin?
What's up, Jared, man? First of all, I got two things. First one, I was there yesterday. I lost my voice in the second half. I wanted to win that dang game for a lot of reasons. My 12-year-old daughter's first game, the Oilers jerseys, we're trolling them. You want to win that game. The Texans are a big rival. Another thing, you want Will Levis to play in these situations because we were eliminated, but this team is still playing like they have hope to get in, okay? And that experience where the other team may not be playing like a playoff team. We are, because Will Levis and the rest of this team wants to try their best to get in, all right? Second thing is, guys, Henry's still got some stuff left in the tank. Yes, he is degraded a little bit, but he's still, in my opinion, a top 5 to top 10 back in the league. But behind this line that creates no holes and gets your quarterback hit 49% of his touches, you go out there and try to run against that. Let's go.
I don't think anybody can run it behind this line. I mean, Dustin, I appreciate your call. I want to hit on the Levis thing that you said, because what's crazy is that Levis leads them down against Indianapolis. And I'm not here to do the, almost winning. I'm not celebrating this, but this is how important it is to understand why you can't just lose all the games. Who cares? Levis leads them down against Indianapolis. They score a touchdown. They miss the extra point. If they make the extra point, they probably win the game. But they didn't. Then they go to overtime. Levis leads them down. They kick a field goal. If they stop Indianapolis, they win the game. But they didn't. So they lose, and Levis's 2 drives to put them in position to win don't really mean anything as far as like the aura around the quarterback. Levis leads them on 2 touchdown drives and a 2-point conversion against Miami. We all come out of that game on Tuesday saying, oh my God, he got it. He might be the franchise quarterback. Look at how the team believes. He's great. He's this, he's that, he's right. Like, yes, there was that after that after that comeback win. Well, what if he had done it against Indy and done it against Miami? What if DeAndre Hopkins catches the pass right across the middle, right there at that target field goal line CBS puts down late in the game when Hopkins drops the pass? And again, it was a little bit behind him, but what if he catches that? Now Levis wins 3 in a row, 3 fourth-quarter comebacks. Be the hottest talk of the league. We'd be talking about how you have the next John Elway. This guy, give him the ball at the end of the game. He'll find a way to win. And that's why it's important that this team with the young quarterback still try to win. That's why I want to see the young quarterback try to win. Because the confidence that he gets from winning those kind of games would mean that he goes into the offseason thinking, not, I think I can do it, but knowing I can do it in this league. You can give me the ball and we can win the game. And his teammates have the confidence of, give him the ball and we believe. And the fan base believes, hey, give him the ball and we're in. And that helps young quarterbacks develop. So the idea of, they're hungry and they're fighting and of course they should be fighting. They're pro football players. They play 17 of these a year. Their identity is in these 17 games a year. I hope they would play hard. But again, when it comes to Levis, there is a benefit even in what are basically meaningless games. 615-737-1025. More of your phone. 615-737-1025. Plus, I do have something about yesterday's game that I want to get off my chest that has nothing to do with Vrabel. It has nothing to do with the Titans. I mean, it does. It cost them the football game. And it's not they should have beat the JV Texans no matter what. But this has got to be addressed. We'll do it next on your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
What was the explanation, Trey Avery's pass interference? What was the explanation on that?
I don't get an opportunity to talk to the back judge.
Okay. None of the other officials?
We're closer to.
I think you would rather call wide receivers offsides, illegal formations, false starts than late hits out of bounds.
Hey, that was Vrabel yesterday. 2 horrendous calls in that game. Now, I don't want to make excuses for not beating the JV Texans because there is no excuse for not beating the JV Texans. And yesterday, I mean, if any number of things had happened that didn't happen or didn't happen that did happen, right? And I can go from Will Levis missing a wide-open touchdown to Treylon Burks to DeAndre Hopkins dropping 2 passes to JoJo Domann getting called for a ridiculous, unnecessary holding penalty on a punt return in overtime that gave you great field position. It probably wins you the game. I mean, there's so many little things that officiating is not the number one reason why. If Roger McCreary keeps the ball away from Dalton Schultz, you win the game. Like, there's so many things. But those 2 calls right there. The Trey Avery pass interference was ridiculous. And then Mason Kinsey hit in the white yesterday. That should have moved the ball up 15 yards, would have been a humongous penalty. It's right there on the sideline. And they just don't throw the flag. And this isn't just about the Titans-Texans game. This has been a trend this season amongst officials. I think they've gotten worse. I used to always say that officiating is an incredibly hard job and that it's gotten worse over the years and it's more obvious to us because the number one reason that this sport makes so much money is because of television. The NFL makes $100 billion in TV. So, I mean, like, they're going to make the TV product as good as possible. Everybody nowadays has 80-inch televisions. They've got super 8K high def, and they have got replay and all kinds of stuff. So we see the screw-ups more than maybe we saw when in order to have a big TV, you had to have a big TV with that thick back. And you know what I'm talking about. The old big TVs that would like take up an entire room. They were so big in the
tube
back.
TVs. Yeah, the tube back there. That's right.
Oh, God, they were huge. And now everybody's got a big TV. And so I always thought that was part of it. But now I'm just convinced officiating sucks. And I thought some of it might have been that they had a lot of officials that kind of retired all really quickly because half of them went to TV, right? Like in 1 year, they lost Perry and Carenti
Gene
and Sterator and McCauley. And, you know, half these guys went to TV. You know, Triplett, you know, the old hillbilly that used to, prior to snap, false start. You know, he's been out. Both the Waltz got old, you know, so like it happens. Hockley retired.
The old Hockey, I was going to say the dad Hockley.
Yeah. You know, so maybe I thought that was part of it. But I don't think I've ever seen the league as poorly officiated as it is now. I mean, that's a point-blank call. And these bozos, these referees that are in the booth, I mean, they're basically like North Korean broadcasters when it comes to the officials. Like, they'll side with the officials every time, no matter what. And yesterday, they're doing the game, and they're like, Gene Sterator says that was a bad call on the sideline on the Mason Kinsey play. And I watched the Detroit-Denver game on Saturday, and they took a touchdown away from the Broncos. The Broncos probably wouldn't have won the game anyways, but they took a touchdown away from the Broncos that would have got them back in the game at third and goal from the inch line because they called an offensive offsides, and then they showed the side angle, and nobody was offsides. It's like, holy crap, what are we doing here? And so, I mean, again, going back to Saturday, I see Trey Avery. And yeah, I'm a Titans fan, so maybe I'm a little biased here. I don't know. Avery's got his hand on the guy's back. But where else is he supposed to put his hand? Is he supposed to put his hand behind his own back and try to make, like, what's he supposed to do? Is he supposed to, like, put his hand in front of the guy? Like, what's he supposed to? He's not pushing the guy down. He's not yanking the back of his jersey. He's not doing any of that. And they throw a flag on that. And it was a terrible flag. And right then and there, what they've got to do in the NFL is they got to have somebody upstairs that as they're getting together to go over it says, no, pick that up. They can then say there's no flag on the play. Because I watched the Minnesota-Cincinnati game, and they didn't call a pass interference down the field that was criminal pass interference late in the game. So how are these coaches supposed to coach and these players supposed to play when they don't know what's going to be called? I mean, it is a train wreck out there. And yesterday's Titans game was no different. I mean, the officiating in this league is like the Supreme Court. The people of the United States, you look at every poll, have the lowest opinion they've ever had of both of them, especially officiating in the NFL. I mean, it was bad. The Kinsey call was ridiculous. The Avery call was absurd. I mean, I've seen guys do things before, like DeAndre had one, might have been in this game. I think it was in this game, where DeAndre was trying to get a pass interference call, and really it was DeAndre who was kind of doing a little push here or there, and I just didn't think that was that big of a deal. Or Louis Riddick getting all mad the other day about DeAndre kind of taking the guy's hands away as he brought in the catch, like, that's kind of – the Avery one, I mean, to me that was great coverage. We can't penalize great coverage. Especially poor Trey Avery. I mean, this is a guy that's not really known for his great coverage. We can't penalize that. I mean, that's just absurd. That was just such a bad call. Such a bad call. And then the Kinsey one, I mean, I don't know what the guy was looking at. He's standing right there. And, I mean, as soon as I saw it, I'm sitting there at the house watching the game. I'm like, he hit him in the white. You can't do that. Everybody who's ever watched a day of football knows that. And somehow they, just pissing these games away with bad officiating. And it's every single one, too. And I'm sure the excuse is, well, you could pick apart anything and every day, and it's not fair. I'm like, dude, these guys are screwing up the end of some of these massive games. And I don't mind what they did in that Kansas City-Buffalo game. That was the right call. I'm fine with calling the right call. What I'm not fine with is the guy tackling Mason Kinsey 2 steps out of bounds. That's ridiculous. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There is a term that has been used a lot this season when describing the Titans, and I am finally going to use it today because I think yesterday was, in fact, the real moment of truth. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
This will be a 54-yard attempt for Kaimi Fairbairn. He's 29 years old in his 8th NFL season. John Weeks, the snapper. Cam Johnston, the holder. Fairbairn's kick is good. And the Texans win it here in Nashville.
Rock bottom. That was what yesterday's game finally was. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about the Titans season and say this feels like rock bottom when it was, I forget how many games in a row they lost. Maybe it was the Jacksonville game. They said, oh, this has got to be rock bottom. Then when they lost to Indy again, it was like, oh, this has got to be rock bottom. For me, I haven't used that phrase. This is rock bottom. Eliminated from the playoffs, losing in overtime to a junior varsity team with a third-string quarterback, giving up 148 rushing yards to a team that came into the game 26th in the NFL in rushing. And they were 29th in the NFL at 3.7 yards per rush, and they ran for 4.6 yards a crack against you. That third-string quarterback, by the way, didn't have his top 2 receivers, or his left guard, or his right tackle. 7 sacks without Will Anderson Jr., the number 3 overall pick in the draft. The Titans had tons of momentum after their win that was miraculous on Monday night in Miami. They couldn't set up the quarterback for another fourth-quarter game-winning drive to keep that momentum, to keep the positivity, to keep the belief. And so here we are on December 18th, and you're out of the playoffs. For me, that's enough. It's time to clean house. At the end of the year, if I owned the football team, I would fire Mike Vrabel and I would fire Ran Carthon, and we would start over. I would find a new general manager. I would let him hire a new coach, and we would go from there. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. Everybody says they're going to be back. The problem is that the Titans are not to be trusted because they told us directly Mike Mularkey was coming back and then fired him a week later. Diana Rossini can't be trusted because she's in the purse for Mike Vrabel. So I don't know what to believe or what not to believe. But if it was my team, one way or another, and we'd try to trade Vrabel, but one way or another, they wouldn't be coming back. Either of them. And the reason I say this is because the expectations going into this season were that this team was going to be competitive. Now, those might not have been your expectations, and those certainly were not the expectations of the national media. But what Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel told you was they said this was going to be a competitive football team. Mike Vrabel said on Taylor Lewan's podcast, Bussin' with the Boys, he said he doesn't believe in rebuilding in the NFL. Ran Carthon, when he took the job, said this is a competitive team. They went out and made their number one priority to be fixing the offensive line. Andre Dillard at left tackle sucks. Peter Skoronski, the 11th overall pick at guard, a position that if drafted in the first round of the NFL draft should mean superstar, sucks. Aaron Brewer, $4.3 million to play center, sucks and can't snap. Daniel Brunskill at right guard, he's okay. And the right tackle position has been a disaster. Even Hubbard, who they picked up off the scrap heap, even he wasn't great. Whether it was the first game of the year against New Orleans, the third game of the year against Cleveland, or yesterday against the Texans, they haven't been able to block anybody. They got the first quarterback hurt in a winnable game against the Ravens. They got the second quarterback hurt in a winnable game at home trying to troll the Texans in the throwback Oiler uniforms only to have that blow up in your face. That is rock bottom. And so I ask of you this question. Forget about the idea that I have to give a general manager a second year when I don't even know if Rand Carthon actually has the role of a general manager. Like, I don't even know if he is a general manager. Does he pick the players? I don't know. They won't tell you. I'm going to promote him. Because if I fire Vrabel and I keep Rand, that's what I would be doing. Has he earned a promotion? Was Andre Dillard really that good that we got to promote? Was Azeez Al-Shaair, was that a diamond in the rough that they found? Signing a backup linebacker to be a starter when in reality he's probably a backup? You know the answer to that is no. What has Mike Vrabel done to keep his job? He lost 7 games in a row at the end of last year, and he got a pass. So for everybody that wants to give Mike Vrabel a pass right now, or to say, well, that's not fair to Vrabel. No. He got his pass last year when they were 7-3 and only had to win one more game, and they couldn't do it. His pass is gone. They used that last year. What's the excuse for yesterday? Still John Robinson's fault? I mean, the Houston Texans took a blowtorch to their entire team, and they are right now tied for first in the division, and they played with a JV squad yesterday. They played with a minor league team yesterday. What that was the equivalence of the Titans being a Major League Baseball team and losing to the Sounds. That's what that was yesterday. So again, let me ask you this. Why am I going to let the guys who got me to rock bottom try to dig me out of it? What am I indebted to them for? What do I owe them? I don't think I owe them anything. I think, if anything, they owe us good football. And here's what I'll say to ownership, because, again, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're thinking, and it's their team, not mine. But they are committed for the new stadium to hundreds of millions of dollars paying for PSLs. And I am going to tell you that if you do not make a move with Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, you will probably have the same level of incompetence in the offseason that you had surrounding your offensive line this offseason. The same level of incompetence of we've moved on from Ben Jones, a real starting center, and we've replaced him with not a starting center. And you will be the same team, if not worse, next year. I told the Predators the same thing after the 2022 season when they got smacked in the first round by Colorado. I said it's time to move on from the GM. It's time to move on from the coach. It's time to start anew. And instead of the Predators smelling the coffee and saying, okay, let's do it, tearing the thing down and maybe drafting one of those young studs in the first round of last year's draft, they decided to go for it. And what did they end up with? Firing the coach, firing the general manager, or the general manager, quote unquote, retiring. Moving on from the coach, moving on from the general manager, and now all of a sudden they're good again. If you don't make this move, you will be wasting 2024. Because at the end of 2024, this time next year, I would be willing to bet whatever I own on the idea that this time next year, if they don't fire the coach and they don't fire the general manager, this time next year, we will be having this same conversation with the assumption that they will fire the coach and will fire the general manager. Their number one priority this offseason was to fix the offensive line. I didn't make that up. They said it. They got the quarterback sacked 7 times yesterday. They lost to a junior varsity team who for the last 5 years you've wiped your ass with toilet paper. You're terrible. You shouldn't be this bad. And I know everybody wants to blame the last guy. It's the easiest thing in the world to do is to blame it all on the last guy. It was the last guy's draft picks. It was the last guy's fault. And he's certainly not blameless in this. But he didn't sign Andre Dillard. He didn't let go of Ben Jones without a replacement. No. When he got fired, you were in first place in the division. He might have helped get you to rock bottom, but he didn't dig that hole. He didn't get you all the way there. Your coach and your general manager and their arrogance and their lack of experience and lack of understanding is what got you there. You really think that they're going to be the ones to get you out of it? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. And I was shocked. I shouldn't have been, but I was shocked about some things I heard in the local media about the state of the Titans. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. Hiller's Cash for the holidays is back. They're giving away cash for the holidays on select purchases. Hiller wants to make sure that every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year. So they're donating $50 in Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase and giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or get a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. And these purchases all have great financing options with low monthly payments. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today at happyhiller.com. And again, I think that's really cool that they give those toys to Toys for Tots, because again, it is Christmas time. And we really don't want anybody to go without. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds of Vols and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
We've got some needs and some holes. I've told you that. I've asked them to look for players that have an element of speed, violence, and versatility, and that's what I want to look for, and look for offensive linemen that can protect the quarterback. You know, whether that's Ryan, whether that's Malik, that's Josh Dobbs, whoever that may end up being. Those are things that we have to do a better job at.
Andre Dillard, is a player that we feel like his best football is in front of him with a new opportunity. Very skilled pass protector, which is something that we have to improve on. We have to be able to protect our quarterback. Bad things happen. We've all seen it. We've always talked about it. So I was excited to be able to add him.
How nervous are you with the offensive line depth, given Nick's suspension and where this team stands with the offensive line?
I'm not nervous, but we have to be better. We have to be better up front, and we got to protect our quarterback. That's what happens in this league. When your quarterback gets hit, they turn the ball over, they get hurt. So I'm not nervous. I'm excited to see guys compete. Well, I think this that group, as a whole, we have to start better, and we need to make sure that we're improving. And whether we game plan for what New England was in, that doesn't matter. We need to go out and play better and use our rules and block better and finish better. So I would say that entire group has to have a big week.
The offensive line has struggled blocking all season long. It's not a new problem. We experienced that last year. Why wasn't there more done in the offseason to address that position group?
Well, I would disagree that they've struggled. They've struggled on third down, hasn't been our best.
Where do you feel like this offseason maybe you and Rand maybe miscalculated on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think there's been too much said, about that, particular spot. I think that, Rand and I and Chad and A-Rob and the coaching staff, we'll focus on, personnel and player acquisition when we get there. Right now it's focusing on, getting a meeting that has the corrections and, moving forward here to Jacksonville and what we have.
Understanding that guys getting hurt is part of it. Is there any sense of organizational guilt for what was assembled to be in front of your two quarterbacks, that they've both gotten hurt?
Nobody likes to see any player get hurt, and the responsibility to protect the guy with the ball, whether that's the quarterback, the running back, the receiver, kickers. So we have to do a better job of protecting all of them.
How about the level beyond that in terms of rosters?
We have to do everything that we can to continue to protect the guy with the football.
There you go, Vrabel's year in review on the offensive line. We have to get better on the offensive line. We signed Andre Dillard. He's going to get better on the offensive line. Narrator. They didn't. Before training camp, I'm not nervous about the offensive line. End of training camp. They got to start playing better. After they got the first quarterback hurt. I think that I disagree with you, Caroline. I think the offensive line is good. After the Jacksonville game, there's been too much made about how bad we did putting together this offensive line. We're focused on Jacksonville. We'll worry about how crappy of a job we did. We'll worry about that later. Yesterday, after getting the second quarterback hurt, I plead the fifth. That's what that was. Oh, it was wonderful. And I got to say this before I get to your phones. I got to say this. The local media, the old school local media, and just the hold that Mike Vrabel has on them is pathetic. I had somebody today that was like borderline ready to fight, talking about how Mike Vrabel has done, that none of this is Mike Vrabel's fault, and that Mike Vrabel is a great coach, and that we need to remember to a couple years ago when Mike Vrabel, led the team and the 91 players, and that when he's got players, he's a good coach, which again, I thought the thing about Vrabel was he's such a good coach when he doesn't have players, so now that he doesn't have players, he's a bad coach, and that's not his fault. It's just, and then it hit me. It hit me today. The reason why I think I am the way that I am when it comes to coaching, the reason why I don't give coaches the benefit of the doubt, the reason why I do not listen to bullcrap is because I was traumatized as a child by Jeff Fisher. That Jeff Fisher could sweet talk his way out of trouble, and that he sent this franchise right to the toilet, and that I don't want to do that again. And then I think back to some of this that, it's kind of, these are the people that ate Jeff Fisher's bull crap, and now they're eating Mike Vrabel's. And it's just, you can't say that Vrabel's blameless. And the example I use is Ackerman. I asked him before the season, why don't you fire Ackerman? Oh, no, you don't understand. I'll tell you, you can't. We're going to go get some returners that do catch the ball. Then after the Colts game, we decided to make a change and thank Craig for his, hard work. And, we're going to try to do that. Uh-huh. Yeah, I didn't buy that one either. You see what I'm saying? Let's go to your phones. 615-737-1025 phone line driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Richard is in Houston and is up next. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Richard.
Hey, listen, I don't want this to be a hate call or anything.
Are you trolling? Are you, hey, Richard, before you do this, are you trolling? Is this we won?
I'm trying really hard not to do that. Here's what I want to tell y'all, man. I'm 62 years old, Oiler fan since 1969, probably something like that. And then what happened was we had this horrific ownership family. They're called the Adams. And,
you got a bad ownership family now, Richard.
We do.
I mean, this idea, thank you for your call. Somebody tweeted me this yesterday, and they were like, Houston is better off with the Texans. I'm like, oh, yeah. Because the McNair family, if there's any family that I look to and I say, why can't our team be like them? It's the McNair family. It's the McNairs. Yeah. I mean, the worst part about losing yesterday is the fact that was a JV Texans team, and you still lost. Now, one thing, I was talking to Corey Curtis about this before the press conference, and then Corey asked the question of Vrabel, which is, if Levis can't go, and again, a sprained ankle, there's 3 weeks left. Like, I don't know if Levis is going to play. It's like, who plays quarterback? Well, if you're a team that is, if the coach knows for sure he's coming back, he's playing Malik. And they'll say, oh, we're doing this just because we want to get Malik the experience and see what we have and blah, blah, blah. But you play Malik because you know you're going to lose. And so you go from the 6th pick or whatever it is now, you go to the 4th pick. And if the owner's on board with it, fine, okay. I saw the Bengals do this when they wanted to see what they had in Ryan Finley. AKA, we don't want to put Andy Dalton out there, have Andy Dalton win games, and then us not be able to pick Joe Burrow. I watched Jacksonville a year later bench Gardner Minshew in favor of Mike Glennon because they wanted Trevor Lawrence. So, I mean, I could see that. But then I also think about this if you're Vrabel. You go to Houston with Malik at quarterback with C.J. Stroud playing, you're going to lose by 900 points. And I don't know how that's going to go over with ownership. I mean, I don't know how that's going to work. I mean, you go down to Houston and get embarrassed. I mean, you got people from Houston calling into the local Nashville show that, again, it's like, ha, 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 the Adams are so bad, ha, ha, ha. And it's like, hey, you guys got to sit in it. Like, it's your ball club, yo. And I guarantee you they don't like it. I mean, I wouldn't like it if I were in their shoes. That is for sure. Sean is up next on the coaching. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, so I'm from Boston, and as a Pats fan, like, people in Boston are saying Belichick's washed up and this and that.
He is.
And Brady is responsible for all 6, but the first 3 are all on Belichick. But Boston's actually talking about Vrabel being the dream replacement for Belichick.
Yeah, I think they moved on from that. I mean, I saw the Ben Volen thing. Sean, thank you for your call. I saw the Ben Volen thing, the report that we trust me, we covered it ad nauseum around here. And, I mean, I just don't think that the Crafts are that interested in giving you picks from Mike Vrabel. I think they just say, well, we'll just promote Gerard Mayo. Which should also tell you about how these other every media person tells me how much Mike Vrabel is just beloved in the league. So who's willing to trade picks for him? Because I'll have that conversation now. And like I said, give Rand some free advice here. If I were you, I would not be sitting there with the owner saying, yeah, oh no, we're so close. We feel like next year, me and Mike, we're going to go out and we're going to get the next Andre Dillard. And I'd be talking to the owner like, hey man, this guy, he don't have a clue. I mean, have you seen this coaching staff? He doesn't have an idea. Look at this offensive line coach. I mean, they went to NAI. They found the most decorated, fired NAI coach, and they made him the assistant line coach, and now he's the headline coach in the NAI. How am I supposed to work with that? Look what they've done to Peter. That's what I would be saying, because if Rand doesn't do that, then, and let's just say that they both return, then they're going to lose next year, and Rand's going to get fired, and he's not going to get another job. Like, his record will be, he's the one that drafted Peter Skoronsky, who was a guard at 11 and was a bust. And that's where this is trending. 615-737-1025. We're back to your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, speaking of Rand, a lot of you think, even though Vrabel and Rand have said they're in it together, they're a duo, they're a collaboration, they're a pair, and I've said I'm firing them as a pair. Instead of saying it's Tim Kelly's fault, instead of saying it's Rand's fault, instead of saying it's Mike's fault, and instead of saying it's Jason Howdling's fault, instead of saying it's Shane Bowen's fault, that they can't stop Devin Singletary from turning into Emmitt Smith, I'm just firing all of them. So now it's everybody's fault. But apparently a lot of people do want to separate. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
final say on the roster, Randy?
I don't think that matters because I think the word and what we truly believe here is collaborating. I think all that comes down to, in my opinion, is a matter of ego. Mike and I, we're here to work together, and we're going to bring the people in here that we see fit, and we're not going to see it the same way all the time, but he and I will have the mutual respect to be able to work through that, and we'll get the right people in here.
Okay, it doesn't matter if I have final say. We will get the right Andre Dillard in here. We will pay Aaron Brewer $4.3 million. We will draft a guard with the 11th overall pick who sucks. And by the way, be positive about our draft choices that we make. So again, I said if I ran the Titans, I'd clean house. They collaborated on this horrendous offensive line that was their top priority. Again, if it's your top priority and you make it worse, which there is no question about, this offensive line is worse than last year's. They have given up one more sack this year than they gave up last year. And I didn't think this line could be worse than last year's. I did not think it was possible. But if they're going to collaborate on that, then I can collaborate by firing them both together. And a lot of people have texted into the text line that are saying, oh, this is so unfair, I don't think. So, again, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. After you fire Rand, who's this great GM you're going to hire? Well, we're going to interview general manager candidates, and whichever one seems the best and the most unlikely to give Andre Dillard $29 million will be the one that I am most likely to hire. How's that sound? The one that understands that guard is not a premium position and that quarterback, for instance, is. That's the kind of guy that I would like to be the general manager. Another one says, if you buy the team and you find out all these scrubs were Vrabel's picks, are you still going to fire Rand? Well, then why am I going to promote him? If it's not his fault, but I fire Vrabel and I make him, the decision maker, I'm promoting him. Why would I do that? So Rand Carthon said something during the training camp tour on SiriusXM NFL Radio that kind of stuck with me. See, one of my biggest problems with Rand is I think that he's a BSer, which is why I thought had a great opening press conference. I really liked him at first. I mean, I said that the day that they hired him, I'm like, I can't tell you if the guy's going to be able to pick good players or be a good general manager, but I mean, he seems that, just the press conference seemed, fine. Which, again, like Jeremy Pruitt won his press conference. So make of that what you will. Kenny Payne's the worst college basketball coach of all time. I thought he had a good opening press conference. That's not hard to do. But it's a lot of BS, in my opinion, when it comes to Rand. In fact, the TD article, the quotes that he had were kind of the same quotes he had when he got hired. I'm not an ego person. Said it in his press conference, said it to TD. So it's like, give me some examples, explain to me. I mean, Buck came out and said, right after the TD article dropped, that there were people inside the building that were saying the quotes in the TD article were like, this is not, this is whatever. And so, again, I think Rand's kind of more of a BSer than he is, a true football guy, which is what I'm looking for here. A good evaluator, that kind of thing. They're not going to evaluate and draft bad guards with the 11th overall pick, which right now Skoronski is bad. Now, he may get better, and I expect him to get better, and it may be coaching. I don't know, but he's not good enough right now. But this is what Rand said before the start of the season during training camp, which left me with one major question, which I'm going to pose to all of you. Play the cut.
Every day, everybody here has something to prove. And again, it goes back to what I said about, the draft picks and the free agents that we signed. And you look at three of our leaders, you look at Ryan. Everybody was trying to cash Ryan off in the offseason, making my life hard, whether we were keeping him or not keeping him.
You were keeping Ryan Tannehill. You said that from the start.
He did not.
But, Ryan has something to prove to the people. The current market of running backs and what they should or, are not making. Derek has something to prove. We had our talks with KB, in the offseason about a pay cut, if you will. So KB has something to prove. You know what I mean? And even Jeff getting his extension, traditionally people say that guys get paid, they get comfortable, and they don't play the same. So Jeff's got something to prove. So everybody on this team has something to prove, to show the world that they are who they are and that they can still play at a high level in this league.
Okay, everybody's got something to prove. Here's my question to you. What has he proven? If everybody's got something to prove, Ryan Tannehill has got something to prove, benched. Kevin Byard has something to prove, traded. The draft choices have something to prove. Yeah, Skoronski proved he's not worth the 11th overall pick. Levis has proven that, hey, he's got the penchant for great, but he also has the penchant for dumb. I mean, what has he proven? So you guys are trying to argue that it's not fair for me to look at something that I think is clearly not working, and instead of digging a deeper hole, saying, let's blow it up, start over, because I think the organization is in a good spot where they're going to need to get 14 new starters this offseason. Let somebody else do that. Because he hasn't proven to me that he's going to be able to do that. So I'm not going to make the assumption that he can do it. Apparently, all of you are convinced that Vrabel's the one that makes the choices anyways. So if Vrabel does make the choices, why would I promote him? That's the only question I have. And so I just want to start over. And that's no slight on Rand. I am not, he is not my kind of guy. Because I just don't see the results. And I hear the same rehearsed lines over and over again. Like even that everybody has something to prove thing kind of felt a little rehearsed, right? So I hear the same lines over and over again. And you want me to promote him? One texter says 20 years from now, it will still be John Robinson's fault. Ken says, Jared, I agree with your take on Vrabel and Carthon, but what would it say to general manager candidates after firing Rand Carthon after one season? Well, I'll put it to you like this. The team that you played yesterday has fired, before this year, head coaches after 1 year in each of the last two seasons. Both African-American coaches. David Culley, who I thought did the best he could with a bad situation, and Lovie Smith. And Stephen A. Smith, the number one voice on ESPN, whether you like Stephen A. Smith or not, Stephen A. Smith, the number one voice on ESPN, got on TV and he said black coaches do not apply for the Houston Texans job. And I thought, dude, the way they treated Lovey and Culley, and like I get what Stephen A. saying, like this is going to be, that didn't stop them from hiring DeMeco Ryans. And it looks like DeMeco Ryans has brought some juice. You know, I mean, I think I just, again, I don't listen to his press conferences. I don't cover him, so I don't have like a real read on him. I just saw him on the sidelines yesterday. But I thought his demeanor on the sidelines just so cool and calm, and his calling card is defense, and his defense is tough and ferocious even without Will Anderson. Like, I am, from afar, a DeMeco Ryans fan. But that didn't stop him, the fact that they had fired Culley and Lovey in back-to-back years. Didn't stop him at all. So, I mean, I'm just telling you. Cedric texts in and says, welcome to reality, Stillman. I told you my goal was to get you to see the light, and today you have seen the light. Vrabel is 0-7 against division coaches and 1-3 against Houston at home since 2019. Lastly, and by the way, that one was an overtime victory against a horrendous Texans team that A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry single-handedly won. Lastly, DeMeco Ryans had more guys out than Mike Vrabel, and his team found a way to win. Fire Coach Meathead, in all caps, says Cedric. Ian, we got to play the cut from CBS yesterday because both you and I thought of Cedric, who always calls Vrabel Coach Meathead, when Phil Simms dropped this yesterday.
Will Levis. I mean, the connection with him and Mike Vrabel, it just seems like they're meant for each other. Okay?
What are you trying to say? They have the same type of personality?
Oh,
In
man.
What way? In what way? Continue to elaborate.
Well, we just, we talk about here, they're meatheads. That's a compliment.
Like we are.
Yeah. Well, you?
Speak for yourself. Okay. All right, man. I'm trying to.
That is for you, Cedric. We'll wrap up on your phones, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Plus, we've got a Titans-ish transaction, and we got some news on Will Levis. We'll hit on that. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Mike, how is Will? Have you gotten the test results back? And depending on his health, is it do you have to weigh the fact that you're eliminated on whether or not you put him on the field?
Well, I don't think that necessarily weighs into, the decision right now. I want to make sure that, one, that he can protect himself, that he can do his job up to the expectations that we have, and that he, really the most important thing is that any player can protect themselves out there when, during a game. So it's Monday right now. He's sore, obviously, like a lot of guys, and we'll see, how things go.
There you go. That was Vrabel today. Jeremy Fowler at ESPN reports Will Levis is dealing with a high ankle sprain. Still uncertain whether Tennessee needs to sit him or for how long, but a promising rookie campaign faces a health challenge this week. I mean, again, when I hear high ankle sprain, it makes me think he's probably done. It's probably a 4 to 6 week injury, and there are not 4 weeks left in the season. So it'll probably be either Tannehill or Willis. I think it'll be Tannehill because I don't think they, with 2 home games, can put Willis out there. Like, look, I think we know Vrabel's on the hot seat. Like, he may not get fired, but being on the hot seat means that, like, you're in trouble. If you have a Brandon Staley-like performance last week that the Chargers had, you may run the risk of, oh, no, the owner says they're going to bring you back, to get the hell out of here, especially if that's on the road at Houston, which we'll get to them in a second. So I think it's going to be Tannehill. It probably should be Willis. I would go with Tannehill just because I don't want to watch Willis play. It'll be so bad if he plays. I don't want to watch it. So just go ahead and put Tannehill out there. But, again, I don't think Tannehill's coming back. But I just don't think this coach can run the risk of losing 65-0. And Willis gives you a chance to do that. The other thing, Teair Tart has been claimed off of waivers by the Texans. And I love it because the Texans already have the second best run defense in the NFL. They just got Teair Tart. Now, Vrabel is telling everybody, I think, most likely, Vrabel is telling everybody that Tart is lazy and that Tart was out of shape and that Tart had no respect of his teammates is kind of, I think, the PR blitz around here. And that may be true. I don't know. I think it's the coach's job to get through to the player. But if you cut Teair Tart, because he's a cancer and we got to get rid of him, and in 2 weeks, he's tackling Derrick Henry 8 yards in the backfield, which we know he's capable of, that's going to be a terrible look. And I think the Texans enjoy the idea of doing that in 2 weeks. And that's why they claimed him. Because they already got defensive linemen and defensive tackles. They can already stop the run with Rankins and Collins and those guys yesterday. Let's run through some phones. Dylan in Antioch has been waiting and is up next. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Dylan?
Hey, Jared. So yesterday was the only game I went to this season. Wanted to see the Oilers unis, kind of like everybody else, and vibes were high. Vibes were through the roof. You had Earl Campbell was there, Eddie George was there, Mike Vrabel walking around in the cowboy hat, Billy White Shoes Johnson dancing around on the field, video tribute to Frank that was really good from other NFL retired players. And they could have had something special. That day, they really could have. And they absolutely crapped the bed. Completely blew it, and it was just that's just what killed me about it. But I just want to say that. Thanks.
Yeah. Now, as far as this individual game, like, I'm not firing Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon over losing the Texans game. I'm firing them over the terribleness of this season, which could have been avoided with better personnel choices. But I will say this: there were about 900 things that if the ball just goes the other way, the Titans could have won. But the point I will make is that you have to screw up those 900 things in order to lose to a junior varsity team. And that's what you did yesterday. You lost to a junior varsity team. And that's embarrassing. And it's even worse when you talk about the Earl Campbell and the Oilers throwbacks and everything else, to have the Texans just rub their booty in your face. And the Texans will have an opportunity to do it again in 2 weeks. Philip is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Philip.
Hey, what's up, Jared, man? man did in the draft, and I don't like how he handled the Kevin Byard situation, but he did come in with his hands tied. They didn't give him much cash to spend this year.
How do you know that?
Also, he didn't have the picks like John Robinson had.
How do you know that they didn't? How do you know that he didn't?
Hold
on. Let me ask you a question, Philip.
Yeah.
How do you know that they didn't give him the cash? He said he had financial flexibility.
Well, just by how a lot of the word that was coming out that they wasn't going to spend money like that. Even you said that on your station.
The word came out from me
money to spend.
that they said they didn't have money.
They didn't have a whole lot. And John Robinson, you gave him like 6 years to fix the line. And
No. John Robinson fixed it his first year. He fixed the line.
First year, he had 3 starters already. He already had LeJuan. He already had a young Spain who was pretty solid.
Oh, Spain sucked.
And
Spain was terrible. I mean, he went out, got Ben Jones. He drafted Jack Conklin. Look, and Robinson wasn't perfect. But Robinson in year one, Philip, thank you for your call. Robinson in year one had gone out and got players in year one. That's how you went from the worst team in the league to battling for a playoff spot at the end of the year. What Indianapolis and Houston are doing right now is what you did that first year with Robinson. And I'm not saying Robinson didn't have his problems at the end and that it wasn't definitely worth discussing if him doing his job was, quite frankly, worth letting him go. I mean, that is a discussion that could have been had. But the idea that oh no, Robinson got 8 years to fix the line. Robinson did fix the line in 1 year. Robinson and Malarkey fixed the line. Okay, I want to touch on this because I'll probably forget about it if I don't. Diana Russini had a report in The Athletic about the Titans. I mean, Ian, please give me the Diana sounder. I know that I'm a little late on this, but please go ahead and give us that.
This Diana Russini report comes directly from the desk of Mike Vrabel.
In The Athletic, thank you. In The Athletic Saturday, head coach Mike Vrabel and the Titans decided to go for 2 points instead of kicking an extra point at Miami on Monday. The choice was an easy one because it had been pre-planned. How, Diana writes. Vrabel and his game strategist / director of football administration, John Stryker, his nickname is Stretch, had actually talked about the exact game situation the night before over a heavy steak dinner. Before dinner, they had been reviewing some of the games around the league and zeroed in on a particular team in their division that didn't use this strategy after scoring to go down 8 points in the fourth quarter. While enjoying a tomahawk steak, they got into it and discussed their own strategy. It became the center of dinner conversation along with the other staff members and Vrabel's family. This pivotal discussion couldn't have worked out better for the Titans because when the situation presented itself, the Titans knew exactly what they were calling. I'm sorry, how would Diana Russini know that Mike Vrabel was having a tomahawk steak dinner if Mike Vrabel didn't tell Diana Russini? She's not even trying to hide it anymore. That's pathetic. I mean, it's like she put Vrabel had steak and potatoes and some greens, but he's passed on the roll because, he's trying to watch his figure. I mean, come on now. And he'd go back to draft night and everything else. All right, be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the Preds take on the Chicago Blackhawks at Bridgestone Arena Tuesday, January 2nd. Tickets available at NashvillePredators.com/tickets. The Commodore Hour is next.